Welcome, everybody. This is September 17th, a meeting of the Nevada Unified School District Board of Trustees. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So before we begin our meeting this evening, I want to make sure we take a moment here. We did have a loss of a student and two students that are severely injured right now, and the loss of a student is very hard, and I want to make sure that on behalf of the Board of Trustees and the district, the Nevada Unified School District, we send our condolences to his family, and that the loss is not only to the family, but to San Marin High School and this community. And we come together as a community and support 100%, and we have their back, and we have to do that. Just think of yourself if you were to lose a family member or a son or a daughter. It hits you hard, and just know where they're at right now. So keep them in your thoughts. And so what I would like to do is take a moment of silence at this time. Thank you. All right, we will move forward with our meeting, and the board did meet in closed session this evening, and I will have Trustee Gala report out our closed session items.
Okay, so we met in closed session, and the first item that we discussed pursuant to Government Code 54957 and 54957.6, conference with labor negotiator Jonathan Ferrer, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, employees, organization, Nevada Federation of Teachers, NFT. And that was information only. The second item.
No, it was gave direction.
That was gave direction. And the second item we discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54957, public employee, discipline, dismissal, release, and that was information only. And the third item we discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54956.9, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, gave direction. The fourth item we discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54954.5B and 54956.8, conference with real property negotiator, property, Hill Education Center, recreational area, agency negotiator, Yancy Hawkins, Assistant Superintendent, Business and Operations, negotiating parties, City of Novato, under negotiations, price and terms, and we gave direction.
All right, and I just want to make a correction on D. It was information only. Anticipated litigation, that was information only. And I think you may have said gave direction. So
Information only.
Yeah. Okay. All right, moving forward, let's approve our agenda for this evening. And it stands as is. So I want to make a motion. Okay. A first by Trustee Mack, a second by Trustee Nell. All those in favor to approve our agenda this evening? 7-0. Okay.
President,
Yeah.
are we going to follow the practice of having the students make an advisory vote on each item?
We're gonna talk about that in a minute.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm gonna
you.
get there, yeah. All right, comment. I do already have some blue cards collected here. It could either be an item on the agenda or not on the agenda. And I believe all the ones I have right now are non-agenda public comment. And if you'd like to speak, you have 3 minutes. I will call your name out. I usually call 3 names in a row. Come up to the podium. Our timer is set at 3 minutes, and when it winds down, we will please wrap up your comments, and we'll move on. If it's non-agenda public comment, the board is unable to make any comment to that. If it's a comment regarding an item that we're going to be discussing, that we'll work that into there. The board can comment on that All right, so consent items for the board. Is anybody interested in pulling any consent items. I have to recuse myself from 15E and 15H.
Madam President, I will move.
Oh, and then we have, sorry, the minutes. There's minor revisions on the minutes, so if you could,
So I would move
with those changes.
consent agenda with the exception of item 15A with the correction that's on our desk,
15A, okay, yep.
the
right.
minutes.
Yep, the minutes.
I second.
Okay.
And not including 15E and 15H?
Yes, thank you for not including that. We'll take those right after we approve the consent here.
You're not going to be able to vote on
Right. So we had a first by Trustee Cooper and a second by, okay, Trustee Aguila. All those in favor to approve? 7-0, okay. All right, so let's just take up 15E, all right?
And I understand that Debbie cannot vote because you live near.
It's within, yeah, proximity of where I live. And so I've recused myself from this item from the very beginning, so I will continue to do so.
So I would move items 15E and H for the board to consider.
Second.
Okay. Okay, so items 15E, we're wrapping this together as one. 15E and 15H, we have a first by Trustee Malak, a second by Trustee Cooper. All those in favor? Okay, it'll be 6-0, one recusal, which is Trustee Butler. All right, that wraps our consent items. And we will move on to our student presentation. So this evening we have Sinaloa Middle School is here. There's so many people here, I can't keep track. Yeah, when we get to, do you want to use the mic? That would be,
That way everybody in Nevada.
we need to have you guys on the mic if that works.
You should talk into the mic.
Yeah, we need the mic
For
for
the
the TV.
for the masses watching at
Yeah.
home on television.
Yeah.
Good evening. I'm Sarah March. I'm a teacher in the ASB advisor, or co-ASB advisor with Nicole Katsoulis at Sinaloa Middle School. And we have a couple of our students who are ASB representatives and on our executive board who are here to talk to you about Sinaloa's culture of caring.
Hi, I'm Joaquin Aguilian, and I'm ASB president.
I'm Kenzie Leggett, and I'm an ASB vice president. I'm Abigail Brackett, and I'm in ASB.
Is that microphone actually on? It sounds like it was on and then it might have gone off.
It's always the batteries.
There you go.
So, Sinaloa Spartan t-shirts. We gave everyone a spirit t-shirt. Students and teachers wear every Friday on what we call Spartan Fridays, or themed spirit days if they can't dress up. It increases community, equity, and school spirit.
Spartan Pride Cards. Spartan Pride Cards are positive-based incentive systems to reward students for showing a positive attitude, respect, integrity, determination, and encouragement. We have a weekly raffle to win rewards and privileges. The purpose is to increase positive behavior, expectations, make connections by giving out cards and creating a community of expectation.
Friendship Week. Friendship Week starts on September 23rd and ends on the 27th. Each day of the week is a spirit day that has a corresponding lunchtime activity that promotes team building and helps students get to know each other along with teamwork. The last day of the week is Friendship Day, which is on September 27th. This day is where students travel with their homerooms to participate in activities that promote friendly competition while building relationships. The purpose of this day is to build relationships, increase student relationship building, demonstrate friendly competition, and promote teamwork.
Know Your Classmates. Know Your Classmates is run by Beyond Differences. It is a national event on October 25th, which occurs at lunch and will help students recognize their own family traditions and values while accepting others' views and perspectives. The purpose is to end social isolation, anxiety, and bullying, and to increase self-awareness of identity and build friendships.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You want a picture? So Miss Benjamin's going to take a picture. Yes, teachers, you too.
All of you. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Sinaloa, for being here this evening, and we have a presentation at every board meeting. School presents to kick off our meetings. So our next is our announcements, and I want to welcome our student board members. This is their first meeting of the school year. DJ, Eva, and Elizabeth, each representing the high schools, Marin Oaks, San Marin, and Novato High. So just since it's your first board meeting, can you just sort of introduce yourself, tell us what school, what grade, to kind of give us a little idea of who you are. You don't have to do that at every board meeting, but since this is our first one, and then do your announcements, and then we definitely, the idea is for you guys to stay for a board meeting. I know you went through a quick little training of what the board meeting all entails and what we sort of do when we sit here every other Tuesday. And you have the ability to do a provisionary vote, to vote on an item if it's a discussion action item. And your discussion is what we want at this table. It's important that we have student voice. And so if you can stay for the whole meeting, that would be fabulous. But we understand if you have finals or a project due, you get up and just leave when you need to leave. But the idea is for you to be here for the entire meeting, and your input is, like I said, important to us. And you just need to raise your hand, which all the board members just raise their hand, and I put you in line of where to speak, where you'll be able to speak for that item. So as we talk through the item, we'll introduce it. Staff will provide a little presentation, and then I usually turn to the board to say, does anybody have any comments or questions? And you just raise your hand when you're ready, and we'll make sure you're able to speak. So, DJ, why don't you start off? I know you've been here before, but give us an idea of who you are.
My name is DJ. I am a senior at Marin Oaks. Did you want me to share my...
Yeah, and then do your report out,
Okay,
however
okay.
you want to do it.
So a few weeks ago, we started our enrichment classes, like meditation club, dirt club, and restorative circle. We have a kitchen at our school, and we also have a culinary class, and they made pasta for our school last Friday. In Bridges, we have a special speaker named Luis Luciano teaching us about public speaking. And students from our student advisory committee are meeting with the other continuation high schools, Madrone, San Andreas, and County, once a month to work on a social justice project.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Eva Gugus. I am a junior at Novato High School. I'm in the leadership class as well as MSA. So prior to starting the school year, we had registration, which went fairly smooth. We did have a low attendance due to the fact that the schedules were coming out later than the registration day. So we're going to work on hopefully getting them out on registration day to make sure that people are there so they can buy their spirit wear and get the PTSA raffle, get involved in that. We had our Welcome Back Spirit Week, which went really well. We had a successful rally and dance. We had our blacklight rally, the blacklight dance, which were really fun, as well as a barbecue on that Thursday, which we made a lot of money off of, which was nice. Last week we had our first MSA soiree, which is pretty much a talent show for MSA students, and you can cross departments and perform anything you want. This was our outdoor soiree, and it went really well, and it was really fun. And next Friday on the 27th, we have a traveling soiree at Book Passage in San Rafael. So different MSA programs will be performing different things all around that space. Last week, we also had our second annual freshman scavenger hunt put on by Link Crew, which went really well. And JORTC put on a beautiful flag ceremony and sung the national anthem for 9/11, which was beautiful. We had our club fair, and we so far have 38 clubs for this semester, which is really good. We, at the Blacklight Rally, we revealed our homecoming theme, which is under. So we have freshmen are under the sea, sophomore are under construction, juniors are under the bed, so that's going to be like Monsters, Inc. and that sort of thing. And seniors are under the big top, so that's circus and stuff like that. So we're going to be working really hard on our floats and our different themes and stuff. And seniors and staff, I believe, in the near future, will be nominating our homecoming court. That's the homecoming report. With office hours, we found that it's a really good time. It's a really nice break in the day, especially with the 90-minute periods. But we're still definitely working on learning how to use our time wisely and make sure that we're going to classes and taking care of missing assignments and stuff like that instead of just hanging out. But if you just need to hang out and read a book or something, it's really nice to have that opportunity. Fall sports are underway and so far doing very well. And at the end of last year, we got our mascot, the Hornet, costume. So we're figuring out the logistics of making sure that we can get the mascot at every sport at one of their events. And then this year, also new to the Novato High campus, is the East Annex, which is just a health space, a mental health space where kids can go at any time to take a break from academics and take a breather. There's tea and there's lots of people who can help you if you're just having a really rough day, and that's really nice. So, yeah, that's what's been happening at Novato so far. Thank you.
Thank you.
Heading over to the rival school, I am Elizabeth Ruvo, and I am a junior at San Marin High School. I am currently secretary for my ASB class. I am the varsity goalkeeper for the girls soccer team, and I am also publicity captain for speech and debate. So San Marin High School has had an extremely productive beginning of the school year. Currently, we are managing the death of 11th grade student Mario Lupercio and the severe injuries of 2 other junior students. Mario was a member of the football team and touched by the hearts of many inside and outside campus. We are blessed to have tremendous support at the school during something as difficult as losing a friend. All right. The school year kicked off with incredibly high enrollment rates, and students are navigating the brand new tutorial system with the enrollment managed by Google Forms. We had positive feedback from back to school night with an impressive turnout. Apparently, the school event appealed to both parents and mosquitoes that evening. The 9th grade parent night was also well attended with a presentation done in both Spanish and English. For extracurriculars, our volleyball team won the Healdsburg tournament this weekend, and our fantastic cross-country, golf, and water polo teams are underway. Our football team came together in an exciting overtime thriller with a well-deserving win against Casa Grande. It was one of the most greatest moments I have seen in my school history. So I am very, very honored to be here and to get to know all of you, and I am proud to be part of NUSD.
Great. Thank you so much. Great job, you guys. Just to go back. Just to go back to the comment I made about the provisionary vote before we move on to Trustee Malak, that would occur on the discussion action items. I'm sure you were told that. So like the first items we have up are our staff reports, and the board doesn't vote on those. Those are strictly just reports to the board to let us know what's happening. And then we move into the discussion action items, and those are the ones where you would be able to make a provisionary vote on those items. All right, Trustee Malak?
Just a casual note, 18 years ago when 9/11 occurred, one of the aircraft landed in the Pentagon, and the team that was lost in that accident, that event, whereas the team working on transferring Hamilton Air Base to Nevada Unified School District, the area around Hamilton, and the C Street parcel, and the project was delayed multiple years until they could restore the records and rebuild the entire team. So Nevada's been touched directly by 9/11. It's good never to forget that it was a national event, not just a local event on the East Coast.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Trustee Nell? Trustee Gasson?
Sorry, I have kind of several things. The first I wanted to mention, I attended the Marin Promise Forum on equity in the Cradle to Career sessions. That was really helpful for me. I thought there was a lot of great information, a lot of partners to meet, so that was really productive. There's also, some of the schools are doing great school events that, or family events. There was lunch on the lawn at Sinaloa where the parents can come and have lunch with their kids, which I loved and glad they're continuing. There was also a Touch a Truck event at Linwood, which was tons of fun. So that was really special. I also attended the Not in Our Town Novato and wanted to say that they're going to be sending a survey out to the community to get some feedback. And the next meeting is October 14th, which should be a Monday, at 5:30 p.m. And we usually have one of the city council members in attendance, as well as our DA, Frigoli. Her first name's escaping me, and
Lori
she's my
Frigoli?
neighbor. She's my neighbor. Yeah,
Lori
Lori Frigoli. I also have been trying to attend PTA meetings, so I've attended a couple of those, and it's really helpful to hear what's going on at the schools and also how they're working through some of the changes we've got going on. And the redistricting forum where we had the community come to look at the maps that we had was also helpful. My last announcement is Gab with Gasson is going to happen again this Sunday at the San Marin Starbucks at 8:30. Hopefully some of you guys can come.
Thank you. Trustee Mack? Trustee Cooper? Trustee Gala? That's why it's called Gab with Gasson.
Just to be clear, there couldn't be a quorum of trustees. 4 trustees could not appear at that event. It would be
Correct.
Because it's not an official board meeting. It's a meeting with a subset of the trustees. So just
Another
so anybody
trustee could go along
Yeah.
with her if they wanted to, yes.
That'd be
And
great.
she would love that.
Yep, and that'd be great.
Trustee Aguila?
Yes, hi. I wanted to say welcome to the student trustees. And I do have a question for them. And I wanted to know what brought you here. I actually met this week with a community member that wants to have a conversation about how we can hear your voice better and how you guys can get the most out of these meetings as well. And so I'd love to hear from you, and I just wanted to know what brought you here since today's your first meeting. But before we do that, if that's okay with Debbie, with President Butler, I wanted to say welcome, and today's Flag Day, and so just wanted to just say wave your flag today. I attended the Let's Talk About Cannabis at the Marin County Office of Education on 9/11, and it was packed. Excellent information. It's so important that we understand the dangers of the vaping, and a lot of our students don't realize it's even more dangerous than smoking. You're inhaling your body's by accumulating all these toxins, and so it's just we had a police officer in the panel, and she explained the consequences of what happens when you do this. It's not just ugly in the moment, but it's also affects your future. So it was a great information. It was packed, and so there's some links that I can provide to the office if anybody is interested, and that's about it.
All right, so school board members, what made you decide to do this role? With all the other things you have going on, it sounds like that you've added this to your list.
Well, ever since I was young, I've always been interested in being involved with the community. My home is my passion, and everybody here is family to me, and so I strive to give the best to everybody in my community because it matters so much to me. there was a girl who was a representative for San Marin last year on the board. Her name was Jimena Lara, and she is one of my greatest role models. She was the older girl on the soccer team who always supported me when I was a freshman, and she inspired me to take on a role in leadership as secretary, and also inspired me to be here. And it's the great people like that in my community that I strive to attend and to serve. So
Nice, great. Okay.
For me, over the 2 years, 2 years that I've been at Novato High, there's been things that have come up that I've noticed that aren't completely all in our control. And if I can bring those issues and those, bring the good things too, so we can all celebrate together as a school district, I wanted to do that. I just wanted to be a bridgeway between the students and the rest of the community. Thought that was really important.
Great, thank you.
I enjoy doing this because we hear a lot from you guys, and I think it's important to hear more about the students that go to the schools and hear about the stuff that we feel like need to have more attention, I guess. So like mental health issues and our safety and stuff. So I think it's very important to have, leaders from each of the schools to come and express our concerns for our schools.
Thank you. That was nice to ask that. Thank you. I attended back to school night for Novato High last week, and North Marin Council PTA meeting as well. And I was able to get to the trustee area maps, the 2 community meetings we had here, one in the afternoon and one in the evening. Very minimal turnout. I think it was Trustee Mack and myself and another person. But we got some, Zach Griggy, I think is his name. He's a past student from San Marin, and he has submitted a few maps, and I know there were some more coming from him. But just to remind the community, on October 1st, we will have more maps coming back based on those 2 meetings that we had. There's some more maps being developed, and those will be presented then at that meeting on October 1st here. At a regular meeting. And then just a couple, there's some bills that are sitting on the governor's desk that we need to be aware of. The late start bill is sitting on the governor's desk right now. The state legislature just wrapped up their 2019 session. So that's important to us because we've already adjusted our times to what we felt was good for our community, but now this is coming from the legislature where it could possibly change on what we're able to do. The school bond bill is sitting on the governor's desk as well, additional money for obviously facilities. And then the 11th grade assessment, which is making the SAT, ACT as being the 11th grade assessment instead of the CASP scoring. And then the full day kindergarten, which is one of my favorites, which is what we need to be doing, and that is sitting out there as well. So those are just some things that as trustees we keep an eye on, and in the county as well across all school boards. So turn it over to Superintendent Koska. I'm sure he's got some announcements or a statement.
So I have a statement that I want to share. It's been a hard week. It's been a hard couple of weeks for Nevada Unified with a couple of tragic incidences that have occurred, and I captured some thoughts I want to read to the community. The past 2 weeks have challenged us. We've been tested by back-to-back Sunday tragedies. My heart aches for all of those affected. I'm proud of how our team and community have come together to support those who are suffering. I come back to a quote from Mr. Rogers, who said, "When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, 'Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping.'" I'm in awe of our helpers. We're blessed to live in a community where there are so many helpers, including students, families, staff members, first responders, our community partners, bystanders, and other community groups and individual community members. Countless helpers have chosen to step up during these difficult times. Their love and support are greatly appreciated and are more than we could have asked for. During these times of tragedies, I believe that it's essential that we come together to support and care for one another. And we've proven that our unity will pull us through our most challenging times. So I want to thank everybody. I want to thank every one of our teachers who's shown up with, somebody directly affected by this, or a sibling or a friend or whatever, and just been there to be that ear for that student, give them a pat on the back, whatever it was that they needed, or send them to the counseling supports that we've had out at the schools. Sadly, we've gotten good at dealing with these tragedies over the last few years. That benefits us now. I'm ready for us to backslide a little bit on how good we are on that. Let those skills get a little rusty. I'd be good with that. I'm sure you all would too. But for now, we're there, and we're going to continue to support those in need.
Thank you for doing that. All right, we do need to move on. This is our non-agenda public comment time, and I do have 4 cards that I have, 4 or 5 of them. And again, the 3-minute time limit, and please come to the podium when I call your name. So I'll do 2 speakers. Bridget Pachetti and Howard Fry are the first 2 speakers.
Right. First off, I want to apologize because it looks as if I wore the wrong color tonight. So hopefully I fix that in the future. So my name is Bridget Pachetti, and I am an alumni of San Marin High School. I graduated in 2012. Tonight I'm going to address a topic that has been in the spotlight for quite some time. From my understanding, the decision was not made at the last board meeting on behalf of the Superior Court judge. So I'm here to talk about athletics with the emphasis on the lights on the football field. So athletics has had a positive impact throughout my academic career, primarily at San Marin High School. Not only was I a 3-sport athlete, but I was also an enthused spectator, and as Elizabeth knows, the football games are primarily one that brings everyone together. I can tell you firsthand that the football games created a great cohesiveness among the student body. Because football is a fall sport, it is at the beginning of the school year, and that creates the excitement and camaraderie among all the students. With this came rallies and pep rallies and all the fun events that surrounded such football games. And I know having the lights on the field will add to this cohesiveness. Night games will give the students something to look forward to on Friday nights, and it will not only keep the kids out of trouble, but it will bring the community together. As we know, the football lights have been this big topic, and I'm sure everyone's getting sick of it at this point. And at my family dinner table, we seem to talk about it quite often. We talk about the revenue that can be gained through the other activities that utilize the lights. So as we know, the softball field at San Marin has lights, and we were able to utilize that as leadership students for Powder Puff football games. Novato Girls Softball is able to have some games under there and other fun activities that the lights help bring to life. I could say that the pros outweigh the cons immensely regarding the lights. I don't seem to have a negative effect on anyone. I know people are still on the fence and counter-arguing, but let's face it, these lights will get turned off and they won't be on all night. Such as the softball field, game started around 6:30, people left after the game, lights went off after, no complaints were seen with this. So Friday night lights are a prime example of our so-called kid-friendly town. I know that Friday nights provide children with a commitment to their school and themselves, all while they're having fun watching football games. I know the controversy will remain, but please consider all the positivity it would bring to Nevada's community. Thank you. And I just want to address all the teachers. I see a lot of familiar faces here. They've all had a huge impact on my life. I remember them, I think about them every day, and my mom talks about all the great teachers she works with, so you guys have our support. We need to get a community support with that, so thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, I'm Howard Fry. I'm a senior at San Marin High School, and I'm here tonight to kind of talk about what is going on and the shift that we've seen in the past 2 years, and that's particularly with Spanish-speaking students in our school and how our school is reacting and handling that situation. This year, we've seen a definitely increase in strength in the ELD program, which has been necessary considering we've seen a large amount of Spanish-speaking students come in, and it has led to a lot of changes, a lot of definitely showing of weaknesses in our systems, and it's something that gives us the opportunity to grow. I'm also here to talk about class sizes that have changed a lot. I've been asked the past 2 years to help being a Spanish speaker and being part of the Latin community, helping in translating for students in classes and being able to teach them in a way. It's definitely something that's not easy to do, but it's something that we all as a community have to come together at San Marin and do. I've also been asked to help TA this year for 7th period with Miss Lopez, and at San Marin, she's a great biology and ELD teacher. And being in her class has shown that we have a lot of things to take care of in our ELD program. These students are honestly not receiving what they need in most of their other classes. They are getting what they need in ELD, and the teachers are trying their hardest, but when they leave the class, they are not getting the support from other teachers, and it's a big problem. I know a lot of these students personally, and listening to them talk about their personal experiences at times can be very saddening. Another teacher I would like to mention is Miss Taggart. I am helping out in her 2nd period class right now. It's Algebra 1, and she has 34 students in that class. 70% of the class is Spanish first language, and a third of the class does not speak English. Miss Taggart does not speak Spanish, but she tries her hardest, honestly, and she's really doing the best with what she has. She has received no help whatsoever from administration, and it's very difficult for her because she is one of those teachers that really cares. And when she's not receiving any help from administration, it leaves both the Spanish-speaking students and the English-speaking students to not get the help that they need because they're not able to get her full attention. And this isn't even the only class where she has that. She has multiple classes that are like this, and she's not the only teacher as well. So I guess by presenting this, it's kind of a hard subject to hear, and it's one of those that doesn't necessarily have like one of those, happy silver lining things, except for the fact that we can try our hardest to improve what we have here. But I would advocate for smaller class sizes and a much higher support from administration coming from the top to help the teachers that are already spread very thin and trying their hardest. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, the next 2 speakers are Karen McCormick and Mariah Fisher. And that'll conclude our public, non-agenda public comment.
Good evening, and thank you for once again listening to me beat a dead horse. I am once again going to discuss the importance of class size, composition, and long-term strategic planning and staffing. I verified today from some of my colleagues that Hamilton still has one 4th grade class at 33 students and one at 34, and luckily that means, or luckily for the teacher a little bit, it means that one teacher is receiving about a 1.3 pay and one teacher is receiving about a 1.4 pay. But you also are incurring fines from the state for breaching ed code. I don't know how much these fines are, and this is occurring at a school with a heavily marginalized population, and it doesn't look good for Novato. I was also told that Hamilton's planning on hiring a new teacher, yay. However, this teacher is going to be hired to create a new split class. And when it would be just as easy to use this new hire to create smaller classes and overstuffed grades. There's rumor that this is being done to eliminate any precedent of smaller class size over forcing splits. I don't hate splits. I've taught many splits. I've enjoyed the split classes that I've had, but it makes it almost impossible to be a collaborative team member in any grade level. And you're always split between grade level teams, and you only receive a 0.06 pay for having a split level class. It's definitely not worth the exhaustion and stress, and I don't do it for the money. I'm going to talk about a couple other statistics. Statistical problem, and there's been a historical gap between administration compensation versus our comparables and teachers' compensation versus our comparables, which creates this double gap situation. Unfortunately, historically, administration has been stating that we are not Southern Marin and we don't have the tax base, but this has nothing to do with the other Marin counties, county districts. I'm specifically discussing comparisons of comparables. The district's own calculation states that NUSD had 34% more administrators than our comparables, down from 50% in 13-14. However, the only admin salary examined was the past superintendent's salary and not the admin team as a whole. But statistics are like bathing suits. And I think everyone knows that I love math and I know how to manipulate numbers. But in an article in the IGA in December of 2018, Mr. Koska suggested that the union and the district review the comparable data to see if the math has changed. I encourage you to do that. If cuts need to be made to give teachers what they deserve, let's look for those areas where we have excesses and not reduce student services. Thank you.
Good evening. Just to introduce myself, my name is Mariah Fisher. I'm the president of NFT. I first want to just really honor the teachers that are here and the students that spoke before us. That's just so wonderful to see you here, and I really appreciate all of the support. I want to address the communication that NUSD put out on Friday. In the communication that was sent out, it was stated that, and I quote, "The total package of NFT's initial offer is at least $5.4 million annually, or the equivalent of a 13% salary increase." So I'm going to talk about two statements with this quote. First, and back in June, NUSD negotiations team costed out our proposal at a total of a low estimate, or at least, 9.6, and a high estimate of 13.7. So the words "at least 13% are misleading and completely inaccurate based on the numbers we were given from the NUSD negotiations team. Second, the lump sum of 13% being called a salary increase is the portion of the statement I want to address in more depth, because it is counterintuitive to the culture of caring mission. Our proposal includes class size language around our special day classes K through 12. There's language protecting TK through 3 in an equitable way to their colleagues in 4th through 12th grade. There's language about professional development, prep time, combo classes, addressing class size at various levels and within various departments, and more. To lump all of these classroom proposals into a total 13% labeled as salary increase is misleading and again puts the weight of what is needed to best serve our students directly on the back of teachers. NUSD countered our proposal with a 1% increase for certificated staff. This was presented only 3 months after Superintendent Koska's contract was approved with a 3.5% salary increase each year for the next 3 years. Let me ask you, what did Mr. Koska need to struggle with to prioritize his increase? Did he have to choose class size or say no to class size to get the 3.5% in his contract? Will he get the traditional us too, where administrators receive the same increase as certificated on top of the 3.5%? Why do we sit here and weigh what's best for students with what's best for teachers when admin gets increases handed to them? When I really sat and thought about the district's misleading and clear message of putting classroom needs on the backs of teachers, I could not wait until the October board meeting to speak out against the clear message you have just sent. We canceled our action tonight in respect for the tragedies that have occurred over the past week, but I want you to also see the respectful presence of teachers who have come tonight to support our negotiations team in the fight for what students and teachers deserve in NUSD. Thank you for listening to me.
All right, we're going to move into our staff reports. Our first staff report this evening is our 2019-2020 district goals.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I am going to talk with you about a little bit about our district goals. These are going to look very similar. These are things that we've talked about in the past. They're things that match up with what we talked about during our kickoff at the beginning of the school year. They're also very consistent with our LCAP goals. What we're really trying to do is find focus. So whenever you hear me talk about goals, you're going to hear me talking about the same three things. You're going to hear me talking about a culture of caring, a culture of competence, and a culture of excellence. And what we've done over the past year, after going out and getting feedback from our community, we've landed on these three key areas, and then we've developed a 3-year plan for implementing them. Last year being sort of our 0 year, this year being year 1 of implementing the plan. So in the area of culture of caring, you're going to see us this year establishing attendance expectations with positive slogans. You're going to notice that as our Strive for 5 campaign. You're going to see us introducing trauma-informed practices to all of our schools at all of our levels. And we're going to begin teaching smaller groups on the trauma-informed practices and processes for the school sites. You're going to see us launch trauma-informed school trainings and developing a culturally responsive teaching toolkit for all staff to use. Further, we're going to be establishing or enhancing the current restorative justice practices that we have at all sites. And then we're going to do something that I think is going to be very helpful, that we're going to establish monthly progress reports with our principals, including subgroup data and categories for absences and suspensions to increase transparency and connect system supports to all truant students. So what we mean in that last one is that each month our schools are going to get a bit of a report card that says, hey, here's how you're doing with attendance. Here's how you're doing with academics in these key demographic areas. So each month they're going to be able to see if they're making progress or not. Then we shift gears to the smaller print, which is really going to test my eyesight, and our multi-tiered systems of supports. So here we need to start by conducting an audit of what systems are currently in place. And then we need to make sure that at a global level, we're doing a good job of training individuals who are going to be able to provide coaching and support at their school site. So sort of launching a trainer of trainer models. And we'll be looking at academic, behavioral, and the social emotional needs of our students. We want to make sure that all teachers have the Tier 1 universal precautions for the behavioral and social emotional supports. So that's some professional development we're going to need to provide to all of our teachers, and make sure that we have people around to support when they have a greater need in those areas. And we're going to create a teacher toolbox that'll be a resource for teachers when they need some supports as well. We need to make sure that we find easy to use universal screeners to help us with the referral system around students who need support for social and emotional needs or behavioral needs. We're going to sort of shift away from what is a traditional student study team model and make sure that we have a more streamlined process to support students with their needs, whether it's through the traditional student study team process or through the 504 process. It's going to be sort of a one-stop shop for students with different needs. So parents will be able to meet with staff and talk about the students' needs. We're going to implement or enhance. So when you think about Tier 1, you think about the pyramid. We've all seen the pyramid where 80% of the kids should be able to be served by the Tier 1 supports. That's what I just talked about. When we talk about the Tier 2 supports, those are the ones where there's students in the classes that just need a little bit of extra support. So in Tier 2, we're going to look at differentiated instruction models that should be time limited. We take these kids that are a little bit behind, we throw a bunch of resources their way, we support them up and help them get back into the regular classroom where they're learning with their peers. And And then finally, there's going to be some for whom Tier 1 and Tier 2 aren't enough. So we need to make sure that we're providing a strong Tier 3 evidence-based interventions to support those pervasively and extremely aggressive behaviors or unusual medical or mental health needs. And one of the keys is that we gotta make sure that we have coordination of services. We can't have everybody out there trying to recreate the wheel. So we'll be working with our team to make sure that we're providing efficient services. And then finally, because that's not enough, that's a lot there, but we also need to work on our culture of excellence. And here, one of the keys to this success is going to be our teacher leadership team that has teachers from every grade level, every content area, developing their leadership skills and being trained to be leaders on their campuses. We're establishing standards referenced reporting, which allows us to have learning targets and proficiency scales. This is just a new way to look at how we determine what it is exactly we're going to be teaching and how we're assessing that and how students are demonstrating their competency. And this is a big shift. So during this first year, we're going to need to make sure that we're informing and educating parents and students about the benefits and strategies of proficiency-based education. And you see PBL still up there. We're still doing project-based learning. We can't forget that our community is key to any of our successes, so we need to make sure that we're engaging our community. So we need to continue to expand student. Thank you, students, for being here, providing us some of your voice. But this is just a start. This isn't enough. It's good, but not enough. We're going to continue to expand our use of students on interview panels where we can, as we have in the past for administrative interviews. We need to especially make sure that we're engaging with our traditionally underserved student populations to ensure that we're hearing them and that they're participating in important decisions. We need to make sure that our leaders are visible, so we need to be getting out to school sites. We can't just lead from this office. We need to provide opportunities for the community to get to know us and engage with us through meetings, public events, and other communications pathways. And then finally, we need to ensure fiscal responsibility. So we need to make sure that we make the difficult decisions necessary to eliminate the structural deficit. When we talk about a structural deficit, that means that year over year, we've been spending more money than we've been bringing in. You can do that when you have a large reserve. As that reserve gets smaller each year, we've heard from the trustees that we need to eliminate that structural deficit, so that's a goal that we have this year. And then finally, we need to find and enhance revenue sources for the district. So it's not just enough to say we're gonna cut. We need to find ways to generate revenue where possible. So those are our goals in 5 minutes or 7 minutes or whatever that was. So I'm sure you have a lot of questions, and as you ask, I'll try to get back to the right screen. Yes.
Right. Trustee Gasson.
Thanks for the information and overview. One of the things that hits me is always stuff that's fiscal responsibility. What are the, do we have any ideas about how to enhance additional revenue sources? I'm kind of going with that is the pools or resources that we might have to get money through grants. Do we have anything that we do that searches grants or sees if individual schools might have something that they can apply to?
There are grants that we always look at, state grants that are always publicly available. We got to look at them, and we got to look at whether or not the goals of that grant are aligned with what we're in agreement on. And then if we agree that they are, then we'll apply for those grants. One of the things you have to worry about with grants is that sometimes all grants come with additional work. You just got to make sure that there's alignment between what the grantor wants us to do. Sometimes we find that grants are prohibitive to us moving forward in the focus areas that we want to move forward. So we don't have a system in place to say, here are all the grants that are out there. But we certainly, if a site is interested in a grant, they can check with us to see if we think it's worth them applying for, or they can apply it for it without asking.
Trustee Mack?
This is kind of the longer term, and I know we're really strapped on our bandwidth right now, but I really see the potential rental income from the property that we have, whatever properties we have, being a key part of that. Problem is we can't fast forward to 5 years from now. But anything we can do to move that along as quickly as possible, I'm totally behind. I totally support, I should say. I understand right now we just have a lot on our plate, so perhaps we can't get to it in the next couple of months, but I'm hoping as soon as we get through this heavy volume, we get right back at it, because that's some serious revenue out there that we can really use to help our budget every year, ongoing.
Thank you. Trustee Cooper, and then Trustee Malak.
Superintendent Koska, thank you very much for bringing this forward. Good plan, good framework, really good, exciting stuff, a lot of new things. As with anything else, I think it's important that we hold ourselves responsible for the results. Yep. And I like the fact, and I know you will, I like the fact that you have that report card you mentioned from the schools, the principals. I think that's a good step, and that's going to contribute to that success as well. I'm really happy you brought forward or added the financial responsibility. We've been talking about that for how long? And I'm glad this is just stating the fact that this is important to us.
One, in regards to the accountability, in our next session, our next meeting in closed session, I'll be bringing back my specific goals that are aligned with the district's goals. So then that'll be your chance to keep me accountable to them.
Thank you. Trustee Malak.
It's good to look forward to a possible revenue source as we have a performing arts center and some other facilities that we've used. We've also are having an ongoing conversation that's going to take more than 5 years to turn into teacher housing opportunities to address the quality of life issues, not just the dollar bill issues that make this a great place to live and work. We're almost $100 million a year enterprise. 95, I think, is a current expense levels. If we're going to find additional revenue, $1 million a year is 1%. So when we start looking at additional revenue sources, we need to be realistic and think of them in relationship to the size of the enterprise that we're running. So if we get $1 million in revenue, that's not going to solve a lot of people's problems. We need to understand what the opportunities before us are. And renting a football field every weekend without lights because we're constrained by what the lights can be on by illegal constraints, we're not going to see $1 million revenue out of any group in Novato who wants to rent space on a football field. So we need to be realistic about what those opportunities are as we make an overall plan. And if that's not going to solve our problem, we need to look at even bigger issues and look at this as a business. How can we take care of the problems in front of us? So I look forward to the conversation. I think and thank you for making sure that this fiscal slide is what we're ending up with. And we all know we have to live within the constraints that the state provides public education. Thanks.
All right, Trustee Nell. Oh, Trustee Gala.
I just wanted to thank you for adding this to the goals. Very important also as individual trustees as well. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Nell.
So I think we're off to a good start, a good outline and summary. I think we're student focused primarily. That's really what I appreciate about the goals the most. And the way to be student focused is to have an organization that's structured around focusing on students. How about that for an oversimplification? So how are we going to do that? So you basically go on to say, well, we're going to work on training our staff, and we're going to do what we can to make sure that everybody understands the issues that are facing us. Not that these but that we don't already know, but I think it's important that we, expand the understanding and finally, actually add a level of accountability. So essentially, we're going to be able to go back and say, I know we're trying, these are the issues, but here's some metrics and some things that can show whether we have or haven't really been headed in the right direction, and maybe we can learn from those results and change what we're doing. So that's all positive, and I like the tiered approach. And community engagement and ensuring fiscal responsibility. As a fiduciary from this side of the table, about all I can do is just to make sure we don't spend way beyond our means and try to predict the future as much as possible, and have set-asides for the unknown risks that could come up. But I think community engagement is a big part of ensuring fiscal responsibility as well. So I'm hoping that we'll continue to be as proactive as possible. I understand you want to focus on certain elements and sectors of our community, but I think it's important that we have outreach to everyone in the community as to what we're doing. So I think we're off to a good start for 1920 district goals, and I look forward to being part of its implementation. So thank you.
Thank you. Student board members, any comments, anything you want to add, or? You don't have to. I just want to make sure I touch base with you.
I just have to say I really appreciate what you guys are doing with the student accommodations for the SSTs and the 504s, because I know I have one myself, and it's been fairly disorganized the beginning of this year and the end of last year. So I really appreciate that you guys are focusing on that, because I know that there's a lot of kids who need special accommodations for things that they have to go through every day. So yeah, that's it.
Also, I know, speaking finances, that it has been a difficult beginning of the year for many of you in NUSD, but I really wanted to acknowledge the enforcement taken upon this difficult situation, because it is not one that is easy to get out of by any means. But I think by slowly but surely making those difficult decisions that are accepted by the community without bringing down any certain system, I think it is achievable, and I think that is something that we can all accomplish on this board, and I really appreciate the time and effort you took to recognize that.
Thank you. I can't add too much more to that. You want to sit in this spot?
I do want to give you guys a bit of a warning. The district goals for 2020 and 21, it's going to be pretty boring. So we may just loop back this, because what we're going to do is we're going to take these same 3 goals and we're going to expand upon them each year. But it's going to be a pretty similar conversation, because this is what we're committed to. This is what we're focusing on, because we think that's what's best for our system.
So this aligns with, I grabbed the curriculum instruction plan. It aligns with that completely. So just for meeting, everything lines up properly. So like number 1 is really number 3 in this plan. Okay. So if we could just, and I would like to see this get posted on our website.
Let me reorder that.
You and I can chat about that offline.
Yeah. Absolutely. I want it to be as consistent as it can be.
Yeah, we have all these plans and they all align, and we want to make sure just in that little bit that it stays together.
Thank you for that.
All right, we will move forward. Thank you, everybody, for those comments, and we will move on to the next staff report, which is the 10,000 degrees. And you have a document in front of you, which is their presentation, I believe. Yes.
All right, good evening. My name is Jen Larson, Director of Student Success, and I'm here tonight with our representatives from 10,000 Degrees. And so I'm thrilled to be able to not only introduce these partners that work so closely with our students, but also give them an opportunity tonight to talk a little bit about their involvement in not just college readiness, but also their career paths that we offer here in Novato. I also want to say welcome. This is the first meeting I've been at where our student board members are here, and I love seeing you guys across from the podium, so I'm glad to see you. Today we have 2 partners from 10,000 Degrees. These are 2 of our fellows. We have Sophie right over here, Martinez, and Gracie Francisco is right here behind me. And as you can see, we have the photos of our other 2 fellows that are working with, three fellows, which is actually part of what I want to introduce that we're very excited about, is the third fellow. But in talking about grants, this is a great opportunity for us to give an example of some of the projects that we have in our system that are grant funded. We're very appreciative that we do have some community support, and one of those is the Haas Foundation. And through that foundation, we have the opportunity to work very closely with 10,000 Degrees. 10,000 Degrees has fellows that work with our schools and our career centers to support students in a number of different areas. In the past, when 10,000 Degrees has come to share their story and their impact, we've really been focusing on the college readiness, FAFSA completion, financial aid. But this year, we really, if you notice in the board report, wanted to highlight some of the work that they've been doing around college and career readiness, because it's a piece of the puzzle that has always been a part of their organization, but has never been highlighted in the community. We want to make sure that our community is aware of all of the services that are being provided. Also, just want to congratulate the team. They were named the 2019 Nonprofit of the Year, and so their work has been recognized, and we're really proud to be a part of what they're doing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to this wonderful team and let them share their work with our team.
Hi, everybody. My name is Gracie Francisco. Like Jen said, I am the program manager for 10,000 Degrees. I actually started out as a fellow way back when I first graduated from college. It wasn't that long ago, but that's where I started with 10,000 Degrees. I'm also an alum of the program. I graduated from Drake High School, and I went off to get my bachelor's degree and wound up coming back to work with 10,000 Degrees because the support that I was provided by this organization was transformative and ultimately life-changing. I'm still working here, so it really has played a significant role in my life, and to be able to come back to the community where I grew up and provide that support for other students has been one of the most phenomenal privileges that I have had in my life so far. So that's a little bit about why I'm here and I'm doing the work. I also I get to work with all of our teachers and administrators and partners in NUSD, as well as San Rafael City School. So I do a lot of driving back and forth between the school districts. And I also have one of my team members here today, Sophie, who I will have introduce herself as well. And then briefly introduce you to some of our newer team members who, if you were here last year, you might notice our team is growing and changing. So we've got lots of new faces doing lots of really great work in the community that we're going to give you a little brief about. So, Sophie.
Hello, everyone. Like Jen and Gracie said, my name is Sofia Martinez, and I am a fellow at 10,000 Degrees. So a fun fact is that I actually came to school here at NUSD. I went to Linwood Elementary School, San Jose Middle School, Nevada High for 1 year, but then I went over to SRJC and got my degree from UC Berkeley. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is that I was in a lot of special ed programs when I was in the district, ESL, but now with 10,000 Degrees, I got to work in the Metas program, which is a program specifically targeted for English language learners. So I'm really excited, and I'm going to hand over the mic to Gracie.
Okay. I also just want to name really quickly that one of our newest fellows, Ingrid Romero, is here. She's also an NUSD alum, and Ingrid is doing the brand new work that we're excited to share with you at Hamilton. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a second. Just as a reminder to all of you who maybe aren't familiar with 10,000 Degrees, we're a college access and success nonprofit in the North Bay. We actually are serving 7 counties now in the Bay Area with various types of programming, but NUSD is actually where we have our strongest presence, which we're super excited about. We have teams working in lots of different programs to support students starting in the 8th grade through their high school graduation, and then making sure that they get connected to our success team so that they can complete their post-secondary plan, whether that is some type of certificate or career placement, an associate's degree, bachelor's degree, lots of different options for post-secondary education and career placement. So that's a little bit about what we're doing specifically in NUSD, and these are kind of the ways that we're doing it. I'll skip this because you have this in your packets. One of the programs that we have at the high school sites is called our Institute program. This is actually our oldest program. We're going to be celebrating our 20th year in 2020, actually, which is exciting. So we kick off this program with the Summer Intensive, where we bring students from all over Marin County and Sonoma County as well to St. Mary's College, and we do an overnight with the students so they can really get a feel for what it's like to be on a college campus. And that kind of is their sort of initiation into the program, and we help them get ready for their senior year. So whether they're working on applications for colleges, financial aid, all of that kind of stuff. We help them through the process. Just spend the least amount of time talking about that program because you've all heard it before. But one of the things that we want to make sure you all know is that this program is open access. So we work with the students that are on our, in our program, but any student can attend meetings after school. Any student can come work with us at office hours. We do that very intentionally because we want students to feel welcome and we want students to know that they have a place to go to ask questions. So we're on each high school campus at least once a week, every week, with our fellow Maria Hernandez, who is working in the Institute program. So that's that. And then Sophie's going to talk to you a little bit about Metas and go a little bit more in depth about what the differentiated curriculum looks like by grade level and how we're supporting students in their post-secondary attainment.
All right, everyone. So like I mentioned, Metas is a program specifically for students who are in high school in English language learning classes. So we work very closely with newcomers and long-term EL students. So Metas is a program that is designed to help students create a post-secondary plan, whether that's going on to college or that's going on through a career path. And our entire program goes on from 9th grade all the way to 12th grade, and then they are handed over to our success team that sees them until the day they graduate from college. So I'm going to go a little bit of a breakdown of how the program looks and how it's built upon each year. So the first year we start 9th grade with personality testing and just kind of a little bit of self-exploration and identity. We're trying really hard to focus on what is this student like, what do they enjoy about themselves, what skills do they feel that they're very strong at, and then moving forward into 10th grade, we start to use what we learn about them to begin the college exploration process. So we begin researching CSUs, UCs, local community colleges, majors. How do these things correspond with their personalities? What sort of programs do they feel they're interested in? So if they tell us, hey, Sophie, I'm actually not really into art, I'm not going to say, well, you should do an art program. So it's intended very much for them to drive themselves into what they really like to do. We do begin to dive a little bit deeper into career and technical education programs, also school to career applications so that they get connected into job shadows, internships, all those things that are kind of exposing them to opportunities outside of high school. In 11th grade is a very exciting year because that's when we start working on resumes. We give them a breakdown. How do you write one? What does it look like? What makes it look professional versus something versus another document? We also give them a better understanding of how do you write a cover letter? What tools can you use to translate words or information that you might not know the direct translation from like one language to another? Then another thing that we do is we do mock interviews with all of our juniors. It's really fun. It's probably my favorite event. We do a huge professionalism presentation, and that all happens 11th grade. Then in the 12th grade, all of their applications are being sent out into the world, whether they're deciding to go on into a career or a college pathway. So we do financial aid applications, scholarships, job applications, the whole thing. So that's a little bit of Metas. Last year we worked with a little bit of right under 200 students, and we still carry a caseload that fluctuates up and down. And that's between the work that I did with my previous partner, Gladys Cortez, and now Maria Vargas. So you will see us at Santa Marin, Novato High School, and Marin Oaks. We're Novato High twice a week, Santa Marin once a week, and also Marin Oaks once a week. Yeah.
All right, this is like we're blazing through it. We want to make sure you have just the basics and you can ask us questions later. So our newest program is actually funded by the partnership between NUSD, 10,000 Degrees, and the Haas grant. We're very, very fortunate to be able to access those funds to support students. And one thing that we've been paying really close attention to over the last several years are the supports provided to students as they're transitioning into high school. We recognize in our own students that we were already working with that is an incredibly tough transition for a lot of our students. And so we're thinking about how do we kind of help build that bridge so it's a little bit stronger. Students feel connected when they get to high school. They're not kind of getting lost in these like larger schools and different environments. And so in conversation with Jen and lots of our administrative partners, we thought about this program that we came up with for Hamilton. So Ingrid is actually at Hamilton 3 days a week. She is in the library, she's in the classroom, she's working with teachers, students, parents, and her, the center of her program is helping students get connected to the pathway programs in the high schools. So making sure that students are aware of the applications, aware that the applications are different for each program, that there are different deadlines for different programs, and kind of helping them jump through those hoops so that they're getting connected to these smaller learning communities. And by the time they get to high school, they're in this smaller group and they have somebody who's looking out for them to make sure that they feel supported when they are in their 9th grade year. So we're just getting started. Ingrid has been at Hamilton since the first day of school, and it hasn't been too long, but she has been doing an amazing job so far of connecting with the parent community, which is a huge focus for us. We really want to make sure that we're engaging with our parents at all grade levels, but particularly in middle school, and helping to kind of calm some of those fears that parents are having around the transition as well. All of our support is provided in English and Spanish, as those are the primary languages that we've been able to identify as needing support right now, and we use Google Translate and all kinds of other translating applications when we need to access other languages. But Ingrid was at the kickoff barbecue last week meeting her families, and so we're really focusing on community, kind of like we were talking about earlier, and the importance of community and coming together to support all of our students through their education. So that's a little bit about Hamilton. We'll have lots more updates after we've done a full year of the program, but we really wanted you all to know that this is happening. We wanted to thank you all for advocating on behalf of this program because it's so needed, and we're really excited to see how this program supports students as they're transitioning to high school. Really briefly, just want to remind you all that we're working on financial aid as well. This is a huge component of accessing any type of post-secondary plan, but we have seen significant increases in participation in the financial aid process over the last couple years. We actually piloted our financial aid week programs with NUSD several years ago, and we have held you all as the beacon for our other schools that we're trying to get to the same place. So we were super pleased to see this year that we saw the percentages increase for completion at all 3 high schools, which is huge. And I just want to thank my team in particular, because a lot of that work is one-on-one. We saw hundreds of students individually through the process with financial aid, and it takes a lot of work, a lot of expertise, and a lot of patience in that area. And we are so excited about the results. We plan to do it again this year. We're going to increase again if we can. That's always the goal. And then just so you all know, 10,000 Degrees has provided over $1 million in scholarships to NUSD grads over the last 3 years, and that does not count the 18-19 numbers, which are higher than any of the years previous. So we're really making sure that we're providing that financial support to students and connecting them to other financial resources. So they're not just dependent on the FAFSA or the California Dream Act. They have 10,000 Degrees support. They're getting connected to scholarships at the institutions where they're going to be students, and they're also connecting with other outside scholarship resources, and we rely heavily on the College and Career Center partners for helping educate students in that space. One last thing that's really exciting, many of you are familiar with the Marin County School Volunteers. They rebranded and actually joined us several years ago. So now formerly the School Volunteers are the 10,000 Degrees Academic Support Team. We have quite a few hours of volunteer work being done in the classrooms in NUSD, so I've listed the schools that are being supported right now. We've got 36 volunteers placed between these schools, and they have committed almost 2,000 hours to supporting NUSD students. That was just last school year. So we aim to, again, provide that support this year, potentially increase. And we're also working with Sherry Manis, who is part of the 10,000 Degrees team as well, and she works exclusively on our academic support team. So that is like a brief overview of the various programming that we're providing here in NUSD. There's lots of other little things that kind of fill in the cracks in between, but that's sort of the big picture, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you all have if we can. Yeah.
Okay. Trustee Gala, and then.
Well, first of all, thank you for being here today and sharing this information, so valuable for all of our students. Wish you guys were around when, to help those who are getting a master's and who got a master's, but,
Working on it.
I hope so. I hope so. That would have been really helpful when I was getting mine, so thank you. my nephew is a student at Nevada High, and you mentioned, so my question is how soon, how early can he and other students start looking to 10,000 degrees? Because you did mention Hamilton, so now we're talking before high school. And so I'm a little bit confused about that. And then also, I have a question about metas. So metas means goals, okay? And so I believe last year, or the year before, you had mentioned, I still want to share my concern. I did last time that it seems to me that metas is for everybody, not just Spanish speakers. Am I still correct? Okay, so it just seems to me like it's a little bit misleading as far as the name goes, and so I don't know, just to make sure that our parents know that it's not only for the Spanish speakers. So and that's why I just wanted to share that, and so thank you for being here.
Absolutely. So I will answer the question about accessing support, and I'll have Sophie answer the metas question. So all of our programs are pretty differentiated. So the 8th grade the program at Hamilton is very specifically focused on 8th grade and helping students transition. There are only, it's about 60 8th graders at Hamilton. So we're starting with that group of students, and we're going to work with them as they transition. And then Ingrid has an even more specified group of students that she's working with that Hamilton has identified as needing additional support in the process. So that's kind of where we're starting. But any student who's at Hamilton can come up to Ingrid in the library and ask her questions about college, ask her questions about career, pathways, applications. But she's specifically looking out for a certain group, and then we'll take questions as they come. So yeah, that's one piece. And then on the high school side, we have office hours on campus throughout the week. So we can actually share the schedule with you all so you know what days we're on which campuses. But any student can come find us either in the library at San Marin and Novato, or in Cynthia Angelicola's room, where they can ask questions, just express, any general concerns or curiosities that they have around college. And then students who want to be a part of the Institute program, they would apply in the 11th grade. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And then,
So, about the name with metas. So, metas does mean goals in Spanish, and that's something I should have clarified earlier. So, thank you for your patience. But the reason that we named the program metas was because the majority of our students in English language learning classes here in the Nevada Unified School District speak Spanish. And one of the things that we've identified with our students is that sometimes outside of their EL classes, they don't feel a sense of connectedness or community. So when we were thinking about the program for Metas, we were intentional about having a name that they can immediately recognize. And one of the things that's really important is that Metas is a program for every single EL student in the Nevada Unified School District, and we do understand that not everyone speaks Spanish. So a lot of the work that we do with students, we let them kind of decide, like, okay, what language do you want us to translate stuff for you? We've translated stuff before to Cantonese, Vietnamese, a few other ones as well, but we use a lot of Portuguese. We use a lot of translation tools. And every single time we sit down to fill out, when we send students home the application, well, not the application, but the consent forms and everything with our students, we do give them the disclaimer that it's for English language, students in English language learning, and that Spanish is actually not something that we use heavily when interacting with our students. We mainly use English in the classroom so that they're practicing their English language development.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that it was for all, since the name was in Spanish, so I just wanted to clarify that. So thank you.
And actually, our Metas office hours are actually open to any students. They don't even have to be in EL classes.
That's great. Thank you for the clarity.
I'll go to Elizabeth and then Trustee Malak, and then Trustee Mack.
So as a student, I think that this is a very, very beneficial program. I am a little bit confused on to why I wasn't familiar with it in the first place, and I was wondering how you reach out to students, because I know that college is such a black and white topic for so many students where they feel like their entire future is dependent on it, and I feel like it has created this unnecessary bubble of stress at school. And I was wondering how you kind of
showed your availability to the students, because I feel like a lot of us, including myself, didn't know that this resource was available.
I was in the same boat in high school, so I understand where you're coming from. I actually didn't know the program existed until my senior year of high school, and I think it really depends on the campus. We rely really heavily on our partnership with counseling and with the College and Career Center, and sometimes when there's staff turnover, like people are learning and it doesn't get advertised, but one of the main ways that we are kind of there for all students, especially in 12th grade, is through financial aid. So our financial aid work is for the entire senior class at all 3 high schools, and that's kind of the first visibility. So you're actually going to see us in a rally in a couple of weeks at school, where you're going to be learning a little bit more about the program. But a lot of the way that we're put out there on campus is through being in the classrooms, or having counselors and teachers and College and Career Center people refer students to us. So we're always sitting in the library. People don't necessarily know who we are. We usually put out a sign and we're wearing our name tags or our t-shirts, but if you don't really know what to look for, it's hard to find us. So that's something that we all need to work on being better about, is making sure that students know that we're there to support. Thank you for bringing that up. I really appreciate it, because that is a challenge at every single school that we work at. Yeah, totally.
Trustee Malak.
A couple of questions. You focused on financial aid, and that's one of the services you provide, not just to the whole student body. And I don't know how well it's attended, but people participate.
100%, because we do it in Econ and Gov, so they have to be there.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's good. So you found a vehicle that puts you in front of every student if they like it or don't like it. So one of the issues in this country is the student debt load across this nation is bigger than the credit card debt of all the adults. So clearly, introducing students to families to take a FISA.
Yeah.
FAFSA. FISA is different. That's a security. FAFSA. And then putting them in a position to be able to easily acquire student debt creates an easy problem that they may have to solve later in life. To counter that, because clearly there's going to be paths that are expensive, and how do you counsel students? And just to be clear, I did use Santa Rosa JC and then Berkeley. That was my path, and I know there's other people in the room, go Bears, who think that's a good path. But how do you counsel families in order to manage the debt load that they incur?
Yeah, that's a great question. So accessibility is huge to us, and that's why we focus on getting everybody to fill out the application. It is a Herculean effort every year. It's getting better, but we host parent nights at all the schools. So the schools are responsible for advertising those parent nights. Our counseling teams help do direct outreach to make sure that parents are coming to get some of that information. So that happens in October at all 3 sites. But then when we're working with our own groups of students, so seniors in the MetBest program, seniors in the Institute program, we actually sit down with each family one-on-one, and we compare all of the offer letters from every school or program that the student has applied to. And our job is not to tell the students what decision to make, but our job is to make sure that the students and families know what their options are, so that when they decide, they know that they've decided going in with all of the information. So we literally do a side-by-side comparison of all their financial aid offer letters, and we answer parent questions, student questions, and we also do projections and calculations for what it's going to look like if they take out X amount of money in loans for 1 year versus X amount of money for 4 years, or kind of the different ways that it could play out, just to make sure that they can see the real numbers and see what those numbers look like with interest. So we're really doing our best to do that. Our team is relatively small in comparison to the number of students that we're supporting. So right now we're only able to provide that support to the students that are in our direct programming, but that's a start. I would love to be able to do more of that, but we have 3 people who are doing that.
Rotary provides a financial aid service to the campuses. They do a Saturday morning, pretend you're running your household, and they run around and you buy a car and get a house and go in debt and discover you've run yourself into bankruptcy. And many students, because that exercise you discover at the beginning, many students don't understand a checkbook or how to balance a checkbook or how to manage their own finances. Do you do any, or do you have available any other foundational financial tools? Because I know in some families, the high school student that's on our campus is more capable in those areas than the adults. They're not
Sometimes
familiar
they're
with
working
modern
more than the
banking
adults,
tools,
yeah.
and so they may do really well where if they do a consortium of 5 or 6 families and you buy one home and then you pool your money to buy another. They have other financial tools they may master, but I know they're challenged. Families get into trouble and not even know it.
Yeah,
Or
so
you go to an emergency room instead of a doctor and have a $5,000 medical bill that you didn't even imagine how it could ever be so much money.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point. And part of the reason that we actually offer these workshops through Econ and Government is we're really, we've been working with teachers to actually include it in the curriculum so that this is part of what they're learning. I'm actually going to the California Student Aid Commission conference in the next couple of months to talk about how we can implement some of that education on a state level into the Econ or into the 12th grade curriculum so that students are really getting familiar with personal finance. So that's something that we're thinking about and working on, and I think I'm hoping there's going to be more to be revealed in that area on a statewide level.
Okay. Thank you for your responses. Thanks. Thank you,
Trustee
Madam
Malak.
Thank you. Really transformative stuff. I don't know where we'd be without you guys. Our gap is big enough, and I can't imagine how much bigger it would be without the work you guys are doing. And it's just a testament to see that you guys come back, and it was so transformative for you that you come back and recontribute. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I assume this is all entirely extracurricular, correct? I mean, none of this is happening in classes for the most part.
It depends on the program. Depends
Sorry?
on the program. So for the 8th grade program, we are hoping to be present in the classrooms, especially during the advisory period where students are getting academic support. And then METHAS also offers in-class workshops and partners with the ELD teachers at each campus to offer a series of workshops throughout the year. So it's light in the classrooms, but we do have a little bit of access there.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. And one thing that struck me, I think struck all of us, and I'm not sure if you were here earlier when one of the students was speaking, Howard. I believe his name is Howard, correct? Is that right?
Yeah.
Howard?
Yes.
Did you hear his concern?
It came in right at the end.
Okay, so basically the gist of it was that he was talking about a math class that appears to be 70% EL with 30% actual full-blown learners, don't even speak English, and the teacher doesn't speak Spanish, and they're lost. How do we address that? I mean, obviously they're getting support in their ELD class, but what do we do for the other 5-6 periods that the kids are on campus?
That is a wonderful question, and I'm glad you're asking it. I think we're all asking that question, and if you want to
What your thoughts are? I mean, we need guidance.
So some of the things that we talk a lot about 10,000 Degrees is how can we get bilingual academic support in not just one classroom, but perhaps all of these classrooms. And that's something that is on the table to talk about. We're still brainstorming how we can address these things, but these are things that are actually on our minds too. With our EL students, we always encourage them to come to office hours. Maria and I are available to translate homework if that's what's needed, or do whatever it is to help alleviate whatever pressures they may be feeling. So if it's helping them with the math equation, then we're there for that too. It doesn't have to be just college and career. That's what we have the capacity to do right now. But Maria and I are 2 fellows, so we are aware that this is something that's happening, and we're trying our absolute best to figure out how to handle it as well.
So really the best approach is, the best avenue might be the METAS program.
Not for all homework translations,
Sure.
but just for if they need someone to check in with, we are happy to be there.
Okay.
One other thing, too, that I'll mention that I think is really interesting that we piloted last year was kind of a collaboration between Linwood and Marin Oaks. So we had several students at Marin Oaks who they have their Flex Friday schedule, and we actually had our METHAS students from Marin Oaks going over to Linwood on Fridays and helping out as bilingual aides in some of the kindergarten and 1st grade classrooms, which was pretty incredible to see for the high school students, and some of them really got hooked on the the idea of like, maybe I can work with kids, or like maybe this is something that I could see myself doing in the future, which is amazing. I think it's great career exposure. And it also gave them an opportunity to step out as leaders in maybe a way that they hadn't been offered before. And of course, the younger students were totally enamored with these teenagers that were in their classrooms. So that is something we'd like to be able to continue this year and potentially expand as well. And we've thought about how do we do that on the high school level. It gets more challenging when you have kind of peer-to-peer tutoring. There's a different dynamic there that we have been thinking about, but that is definitely something that is on our agenda, and we'd like to be a part of the solution.
Love the thought process.
Yeah.
So our community liaison over at Novato High School, I believe, forgive me if I'm incorrect, but she started, I think it was her and her group of students who started something called the Homework Club. So what they're doing is that they're bringing in long-term EL students to help newcomer students translate any homework that might not be readily accessible. So that's another idea, is having students help students, especially if some of them are already being able to access one language versus another.
Got it. Okay. One question for district staff, actually. I think I understand the difference, but I think it'd be helpful, this is almost rhetorical in a sense, but can we talk through a little bit of the difference between what 10,000 Degree does versus what we do with college and career readiness, since there seems to be a fair number of parallels between the two?
I'm not 100% clear on the question.
Well, college and career readiness, it obviously used to be get focused, stay focused. That's no longer part of it. And what our freshmen are still taking it, half the year, right, a semester. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of the initial steps you guys take are the same steps we take in college and career readiness. And just trying to better understand what we do there versus what is done with 10,000 Degrees, just to be a little clearer. Obviously, that's applied to all of our students.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is the targeting of a specific group of students that have been traditionally underserved, and that's the purpose of this. This is, so if you think about our pyramid of intervention, mm-hmm. right? What our college and career counselors do is work with that 80%. I mean, they work with 100%, but we know that some kids need a little bit more, and that's why we partner with 10,000 Degrees to support those students that have traditionally needed a little bit more.
I just want to articulate clearly, because I think there's going to be people out there that ask that question.
Yeah.
I would consider us a supplement or a reinforcer of what's going on in that space. We're there to kind of continue that on, right? Because one semester freshman year is a great way to kick off, and then we want to make sure that students are continuing to build those skills and have that support as they go through the whole high school process. Does that help clarify a little bit?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Good question. Thank you. Trustee Cooper, did you? No?
Yes.
Okay, and then Trustee Gasson.
Absolutely.
And then we're going to wrap this up.
Thank you very much for coming. I think if you bring the same passion that you bring here, in fact, I know this is true, that you do bring the same passion to our students. No wonder it's getting results. So here's hats off to you. Did you mention your success team? Okay. So I didn't know if I was remembering that correctly or not, but does the success team, if I understand it, follow the students through the college and make sure they graduate, in fact, complete their projects?
Yeah, and then they might wind up as fellows like we did.
Right, like you.
Yeah, so that's the whole point of the success team.
Okay, so I did understand that correctly. And so my question is, how have you been able to track that with NUSD, Novato High and San Marin? Have you gone through a 4-year course?
Oh, yeah.
Where are we at?
That's a really great question. I can provide specific numbers. I can send those to Jen, and she can.
You can give us kind of an idea.
So I have numbers specific, like overall for our programming, over 80% of our students graduate within 6 years, which, yeah. So I can get specific numbers for NUSD to share with you all.
I'm happy with 80%.
Thanks. Yeah, we are too. We're always trying for more, but I think it's a good starting point.
That's great. Okay, that was my only, and thank you. Keep it up.
Thank you.
And
Trustee
welcome
Gasson?
to you.
And then Trustee Miller, and then we're going to.
Yeah, I'm just really quick. First, I want to say this is the second time I've heard you speak in like a week, and I love your enthusiasm, and thank you for what you do. It's just been so helpful to learn about all this stuff. It gets me excited. My question specifically is about the pilot program at Hamilton, and just a brief statement about where is that going? Is it a one-year thing, hoping to expand to our other schools?
I'll take that one. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as she mentioned, we know that this is a challenge for all of our middle school students. We know that the transition to 8th grade to 9th grade is a challenging one. We started at Hamilton as a pilot for 2 reasons. One, because they have a small population, and 60 people is about what one fellow can hold as a caseload. And so we wanted to be able to have a good model. The second is we know that the transition for our 8th graders at Hamilton to the high school is even more severe because they've been in a K-8 model. And so it's our one school where they haven't acclimated to a larger community-based organization like the comprehensive high schools. And so we do know that they also have a limited staffing ratio because of the small community. So they don't necessarily have the same resources on the campus that the other 2 middle schools do that naturally feed into some of those pathway programs. So for a number of reasons, Hamilton was a good place for us to start the program, use it as a little bit of a pilot test bubble. And yes, the goal would be to expand the program to any students who needed that type of support, and mostly the engagement of both the students and their families and understanding the process to move into our smaller learning communities in the high schools. Does that answer?
Trustee Malak?
Is the 10,000 Degrees program reaching to the graduate college level at all?
Very minimally. It kind of depends on, we have donor-advised scholarships that sometimes support, like, doctorate programs for students or master's programs in very specific areas. We also have a scholarship for teachers because we know teachers need more support, so anybody who's looking to get credentialed. So we have some specific support there, but it really depends. Yeah.
Thanks.
Great question.
All right, we will wrap that up. I know last year it was a good conversation, and this year was right there as well. So you always bring a wealth of information, and we appreciate the work that you do at our school sites.
Thank you. We really appreciate you all.
All right, our next item is Marin Promise, our partnership. No, 14. Authorizing the bond. Hi, Ann.
Good evening, trustees. It's my great honor to introduce Ann Matheson, a familiar face to all of us tonight. The last few weeks, I just want to echo Superintendent Costco's message tonight of just the incredible gratitude and humbling awe that you get to have when you work in an educational system like ours, and you really come to truly understand what community needs and what partnership means, and we've really seen that in a real impressive way of late. And when we think about that partnership, one of the partnerships that's most important to us in our community is the work that we're doing with Marin Promise. Marin Promise is really an organization that takes the threads of so many of the nonprofits and so many of the academic supporters out there in the communities and weaves them together in a way so that we can experience them more powerfully as an agency. And when I think of Marin Promise, I think of Helen Keller's quote, alone we can only do so much, and together we can go so far. So Ann is going to sort of review for us a little bit about our partnership. We're going to try to give you really a high-level, quick overview, and then leave some time for questions from the board. Ann?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. I know it's late, and I'm going to try to zip through this slide presentation quickly, and I'm sure Amy can share it with you later if you want to do more. But most of you, I think, know Marin Promise Partnership's vision is that every child in Marin, especially those in Novato, reach their full education potential. We know right now we have a gap And our goal is to close the gap, and we've set an audacious time frame of 2028. Marin Promise is different. First of all, I don't know if there are, I think, 10,000 Degrees left, but 10,000 Degrees is, one of our most important partners. They're actually our fiscal sponsor and helped kind of incubate Marin Promise. And so a lot of the success that we've had is by bringing together partners like Novato and 10,000 Degrees to kind of do this really collaborative work together. So we started about 2012, and you can see kind of where we are on this timeline. And we started by building the infrastructure and creating a partnership. And in your package, you've got a list of the partners, including those who are on the Leadership Council, which includes Chris Koska, thank you, just joining, as well as other partners throughout the community. And then over time, our goal is to bring all of these partners together and figure out what's working. Like what's working in our community to close these education gaps. And as we do that, we want to share what's working. And we've got now in your packet, there's 3 what we call learning briefs, which look like this, which really basically talk about not like anointing what programs are working, but like what processes is working. So one of the things you just heard about from 10,000 Degrees is what we would call, a best practice in terms of how they describe the fact that they're partnering with you guys, with the schools. And it used to be that 10,000 Degrees would kind of knock on every principal's door and try to figure out how to get their programs into the schools. And what Marin Promise was able to do is bring them together with other nonprofits and the school district. And the school district was able to say, hey, why don't you come into government and econ classes? Duh. It seems so easy, but if you don't have that high-level coordination and meeting, you don't come up with those ideas when you're working in your silos. So that's what we try to do to make things better. That's a learning brief. And I'm really here because when Chris came on and Jim left, I said, hey, are we still partners? Don't forget about us. And Chris, of course, knew all about us, but one of the things we're doing this year is we're really trying to meet with every board of every partner to kind of go through what the partnership means, what the agreement is. And these are the components of the partnership agreement. The first, these are our principles. I won't go through those with you tonight. But the first thing is that you agree to share relevant student-level data, which is game-changing. And what that allows us to do is provide this report card. This is a report card for the county. And if you look across from cradle to career, starting with how ready are kids when they come to the school, into the school district. And you can see that there's already a 23% gap when kids arrive on the front step. And the reason we know that this year is because MCOE and First Five introduced the KSEP, which is a kindergarten readiness assessment that about 30% of schools did last year, and this is the data from that. What we also do is we have a Novato-specific report card, which you can see looks pretty similar to the county, except for we don't have the KSEP data for Novato yet. So our hope is that over time, all of the kindergarten teachers in Novato will administer this KSEP, which is a pretty easy assessment, and we'll be able to provide you with where the kids start when they come into Novato. The second part of the agreement is that we hope that all of our partners will align their goals and indicators with these cradle to career indicators, so that if, as a county, we're really focused on our kids reading by 3rd grade, if all of our partners are really focused on our kids learning by 3rd grade, that's important. It's obvious for school districts how that works, but with an organization, let's say like 10,000 Degrees, the way that works with them is for 3rd grade reading, they align their tutoring program to connect and make sure that they're working with 3rd grade especially. As you can imagine, if everybody aligns their goals, we'll all get further together. And one great example of that here is the Keeping Every Door Open strategy, which I'm not going to go into in depth tonight. But this is the timeline, and Novato is our poster child in terms of progress and having completed the equity audit and starting, I know, to work on the blueprint planning, which is, I just want to say, it could be game-changing, and Marin is really leading the way in this work throughout California by doing it as a county and doing it as kind of an inside-outside approach, and not having the advocates outside the school coming and storming the boardroom and, you know, insisting that you guys vote on a new policy. It's like having that policy developed within the school, knowing that you're going to get the support from the community to move forward. So that's exciting too. Another part of the partnership is to commit superintendent and staff time, which you guys are doing. Chris is now on the leadership council, and you can see all of the names. And Amy, you're going to have to correct any of these that are wrong, but this is our understanding of kind of who's involved in each action team. And lastly, to take a public action to close equity gaps. And Novato has already placed this racial equity statement on your website. And this is something that all 30 of our leadership council members are placing. You and actually also agreed to take a racial equity assessment every other year and set some SMART goals to try to, you know, make changes in that equity assessment. And again, if all 30, you know, and eventually 100 of our partners do these things, you can see how it would really change the trajectory across Marin and help us reach our goal. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions at 9 o'clock.
Trustee Gasson?
Thank you for being here, and actually love all the information and the sheets. Well, the one I was looking at, I guess it's a general question that it occurred to me when I was looking at all the numbers and things. So when we're talking about the numbers that feed into these results, they're not going to include private or charter schools, correct? Well, maybe charter.
They would include charter.
But not private. Okay, because some of them, like on the 4-year plan, I mean, the results are 55% of, well, anyway, they're just really, really low. And also the demographics seemed kind of high. So I was wondering if there's although that says it says the total high school graduates in Marin is 2,527, of which 1,049 are students of color. So I tried looking that information up online because that seemed a little bit off. So that was why.
25%? Is that?
No, it's actually almost half.
Sorry, where are you looking?
It's on. That's okay. I mean, it made me start processing where the information that was being collected for different data, and the fact that if it's not including some of the private schools and just how it might be skewed, to have a 50% students of color out of graduates in Marin County seemed
that isn't right.
Right, and I did try to research, but anyway, thank you for that point of context.
Well, let's point out to me on this or where that is, because that isn't right. It's not that high.
Okay, I can give you my sheet.
But it could be that high of a subgroup of one of these action teams.
Okay.
That they might be just looking at a certain group of kids.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anybody else? Trustee Malak?
Thank you for all this work. I just want to remind us all that if we don't find a way for the newcomers to our community to become part of the community and contribute to the community, have standing in the community, and can take and go to Santa Rosa JC and off to Berkeley, like, you know, I did a long time ago, but is now available to the new population of this town. If we don't keep the demand that be true, we're going to end up with a segregated society, and Novato will not be the kind of town we want to live in. So this is way more important than just what happens in the school. This is about what happens in the town we live in. And I know we all know that already, and I just wanted to out loud say, this is about the town we live in, not just about the school classroom that you go to.
Thank you for that.
We're here.
Yeah. All right, I don't see anybody, no more questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Also, I just wanted to say I'm really sorry for the tragedy that's happened here, and throughout Marin, our thoughts are with you.
Thank you. All right, the 13D is our next item, health and safety guidelines, the air quality and public safety, public shut off.
Yes, thank you. Marin County Office of Education has been busy in the past month developing some guidelines for all the school districts in Marin, one about air quality and one about the PG&E's public safety, public shut off. I always, okay, thank you. Power shut off. So I'm going to start with the air quality. And so, you know, in the last couple of years, we've had wildfires that impacted our air quality, and we've, you know, have talked as a county, do we close schools, do we don't, what's the appropriate level of physical activity, et cetera, like that. So MCOE, Marin County Office of Education, along with the Marin Public Health Officer, developed guidelines based on our local air quality district, documentation from the US EPA, and the Centers for Disease Control. So included on in the board report was this Marin County Air Quality Outdoor Activity Overview for schools. And you've probably seen this. Just want to move it up. Oh. And you've probably seen something very similar to this with all the flags on the color of the different flags for the air quality, the AQI, the air quality index. And so now they've included information on what type of activities it would be okay for. So on the green, on the green, which is good, you know, sure, go outside and regular activity. Yellow, okay, so, you know, students who are unusually sensitive, you know, to air pollution, they should probably be a little more careful. Orange, it's unhealthy for sensitive groups. So short activities outside, you know, longer activities such as athletic practice, take more breaks, do less intense activities. The unhealthy in the red, they're saying it, for our more sensitive students and staff members to really stay inside and don't go outside, but they're still saying it's okay to go outside, but not for very long. And so this is sort of given the guidelines. And then the next document really starts going into the details of the activities for each level, like for recess, PE, athletic practice, scheduled sporting events on one side, and then what the guidance is for each level going across. So I think this is really going to help us and all the districts across Marin give guidance to our schools if unfortunately if we have wildfires, what we can give them guidance for. The other document, which is additional air quality information, those highlights really kind of specify that as a county, we're going to use airnow.gov as the official, like what the AQI is, the air quality index, as opposed to, we've heard about purple air, which is all these different ones all over the place, but they decided let's just use air quality, airnow.gov. They also came out with information about the masks and how those have limitations. We've heard a lot about the N95 masks, but basically that they really require a tight seal and have a professional that put them on, and it's really difficult to get them well fitted for children. So they're recommending not to have those masks because it could cause breathing difficulty for sensitive breathers. Deeper breathing might cause deeper breathing and getting the particulates in their lungs. So that they've come out with that. So I don't know if you want me to keep going and then have questions at the end, or
no, keep going.
Okay, great. So then the next thing is the public safety power shutoff. I don't think I have the. And so MCOE, Marin County Office of Education, collaborated with Marin County Fire Department, Marin County Sheriff's Office, and PG&E, and county district superintendents, to talk about what would happen, what would we do when the power gets shut off. Now, this is PG&E's plan to shut off the power when there's sort of a confluence of a few factors of high temperatures, high winds, and the humidity, and it kind of comes together, and they're concerned about a wildfire. So what would we do if that happens and the power gets shut off? And PG&E is saying that they're going to let us, inform the community 24 to 48 hours ahead of time. So that would give us time to plan. So the guidelines that MCOE with their partners developed was that in the event that the power is shut down during a normal school day, we would continue school that day, but then we'd close school tomorrow. If we found out that if the power shut off, if we knew it was going to shut off like on a Sunday or a Monday, it was going to be in the afternoon, the evening, let's say the evening, then we would not have school the next day. And so that, and the power could be out for 3 to 5 days, depending, because PG&E's even though the power may be shut off for a short amount of time, maybe a day. I'm just saying as an instance. Because there was high winds and high temperatures and the humidity, but they need to check all the lines before they turn everything on. So it could take up to a few days to turn everything on. So one of the challenges is the communication during these power outages. How do we communicate with our families? I think ahead of time we can certainly let them know what the plan is, but this is still sort of, what do we do? Because we don't know if the cell towers are going to have power or not. Are people going to have their cell phones charged? Or will they have, depending where it's turned off? There's a whole lot of questions about this, and actually we're just sort of, we'll figure this out as we go along. So they've got a plan as best we can at this point. So I've also in this board report were some communications that the county has come up with a draft for us to send out to our community. And Superintendent Koska at, I think, one of the prior board meetings presented our heat plan and talked also about the public safety power shutoff. And so and he mentioned that we're working with other Novato agencies, the fire district, the police department, and the city sanitation, water district. So we want to put together communication that sort of addresses our specific Novato needs. And so our next step is to get that communication out to our community along about the PSPS, the heat plan that Superintendent Koska presented, and also the air quality guidelines. We want to include all this information in our emergency preparedness and safety plan, and also post all this information on the NUSD website. Thank you.
Great work, Leslie. Thank you.
Trustee
Gasson.
Just something quick, and thank you for all of this information. Hopefully we don't have to use it this year. Trying to make it through the year. One thing I haven't, I didn't catch it at first, and it's just a little, I will admit, it's probably being really picky, but one of the things and now I can't find it, but whenever we're referring to that there's only 2 schools in Tier 2, every time I read that, I understand that that's true, but if we could have some kind of statement that based on the threat for those schools does not indicate whether the power will go out. In other words, the way that it's phrasing it could be any of our schools, not just the ones that are in Tier 2, if that makes sense. Because it would depend on the line of the transmission, whether a school would go out. So
is that in this board report?
It's in the top, yeah,
it's
in
the
the
letter,
letter.
the recommendation for schools.
Okay.
But just when we're thinking about communication, again, if you haven't been to any of the sessions, it would, my first one was like, oh, great. I'm not Tier 3, but then I'm like, oh gosh, I'm sure on the line that if power gets cut out, it's gonna be out.
Where is it?
I think it's in the front.
Recommendation for schools, I think it is. This one.
Okay.
It mentions
you.
tier
It's
2 and tier 3.
It's in your actual report under background, and it talks about NUSD has 2 schools in tier 2.
Oh, okay.
San Jose Middle School and Lomanberry. Again, it was more just in point of context when that comes up, just to have a notation that that's not a designation for being more likely to be out of power than any other school necessarily. Or you can disagree, but I mean, as I understand it, like where I am, the pathway of how I get my electricity will probably be shut off, but not because of what tier I'm in.
Right.
Like what happened recently when the power was shut off. They had a blackout for countywide.
And I didn't know that, and unfortunately what happens to me is I have to go drive in my pajamas down to Arthur to get cell reception to find out what's going on. So going along with what you said, there's a lot of scenarios that can happen if people don't have their phone charged.
It's definitely a work in progress.
No, because there are so many scenarios, and you know, and you don't know which way they're going to be turning the power off, and I hate the fact that it could, well, and it could affect your water too. And this is the only time I'm happy that I'm on my own septic system, because sewer can be a problem too. So.
At the last meeting that we went to last week for this, in our partnership, the Water District has actually added a lot of backup generators. Their board approved, I think, about $200,000 to spend on backup generators for their water pumps. So that's the good news.
I think the biggest concern is the cell towers they only have batteries for maybe 6 hours. And they're gonna drop offline, and we rely on those, so.
Actually, in our last meeting, they said that the local service providers have committed to improving that. You know, when, how long, we don't know.
Right.
I do have to say, I got to be really complimentary of the city of Novato, because we have been working long and hard on this topic, so that, you know, it's still a bit of a mystery, right? Because PG&E is being very secretive about what their grids look like. Yeah. And so, you know, that part of it's a mystery, but it's nice to know that we're all working together in partnership to be as prepared as we can be when the time comes.
And I will add that the City of Novato Fire District, they have an extensive playbook to sort of address every scenario going through it. I mean, they've really thought this through, and they started in the spring on this.
All right, Trustee Nell, sorry. I'm looking the other way. Yes, Trustee Nell.
Leslie, thank you for bringing this information forward and participating. It's regrettable that we have conditions like we had when the fire started, and now we all live in a world that has to deal with this probably on a more regular basis. So I think it's valuable for an organization like ours to work with our other community organizations to sort of study it, get organized, and come up with some recommendations on what to do. I personally, during the fires last year, fielded several calls, and I was hearing comments like, "I read it on Facebook." Like, that's not really an authority. Where you should get your advice on what you should or shouldn't do during a poor air quality day. So what I'm trying to emphasize is the value of bringing this information forward. It's going to eventually give us something to go to, so that we can be a little more decisive on the decisions that we make regarding our students and our surrounding communities. So I think it's important. I'm not really sure. You know, your board report says there's no recommendation, and so is it for us to assume that we're going to refine this a little bit more, and at some point maybe we will actually be adopting this information, or we'll incorporate it into our own specific plan? I'd like to have that coming forward for both the air quality as well as the PG&E things, and I had another comment, but did you want to address that question? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe that we'll take action on any of these three plans for the board to say these are our adopted plans. We're bringing them forward and saying these are the recommendations of the experts in our area, and this is what we plan to implement, and we're providing you with that information. And we will continue to refine it, and of course, we're open to your feedback on how we make them better.
Yeah, I'm not saying this has to, rise to the top of the list and has to get done, but I think at some point we're going to have to make some decisions on our own. And I think we're probably, I'm speaking to the board, at this point we're probably going to want to have an effort to consolidate it and sort of make it, how are we going to go about deciding what to do when conditions get bad enough? So that would be my request going forward on both these subject matters. But I do have another, it's more of a comment than anything, but during all of these conversations and all this energy and these public tax dollars being spent on the sheriff's department, the fire departments, everything, has anybody said anything about insisting that PG&E simply replace its infrastructure in a way so that it doesn't cause fires?
Well, I think, go ahead. Go.
So
Yes, well,
I'm serious about this because we're sitting here going, oh, we're helpless and we can't do anything. I really think that the people of this state of Northern California need to stand up and ask more of their Public Utility Commission. And I'm just wondering, you're in these meetings, you're hearing these things. Does anyone seem to be concerned about the fact that the electric grid and infrastructure is failing, or certainly not up to to safety expectations, and they have put forward a plan to fix that? Is there any discussion of that going on at all in these meetings?
Yeah, so my typical level of interaction with PG&E is when I plug something into the wall. So, I'm not an expert in that field. We're working with people who have, when we work with these partners, who have significantly more conversations with PG&E around these topics. And to a person, they're pretty disappointed in any response they get from PG&E. So, and for example, let's say you're a restaurant, you're a small family restaurant, and our power goes out for 4 or 5 days, and you lose all the food that you had refrigerated. Will there be reimbursement for that? And the answer from PG&E is that there will absolutely, at this point, not be any reimbursement for losses as a result of the public safety power shutoff. So we're not, outside of the fact that they're trying to do this to keep, another tragedy from happening like Paradise or Santa Rosa or Napa, we're not seeing a whole lot of heart from PG&E in these interactions. And I'm sure maybe it's out there and maybe we're missing it, but I'm just letting you know that's what you asked, what's going on, that's what's going on.
So it's time to say something. And so in addressing my fellow trustees, I think at some point we should, at a minimum, be putting forward some kind of resolution that is simply just complaining about the circumstances and demanding that our state government do something about the condition of our infrastructure, because it's unacceptable and it's very, very costly, not to mention the danger that's involved. So if the board doesn't mind, there are some ideas around. CSBA has got some ideas, but perhaps maybe if you'd be interested in complaining officially, I'd like to make a suggestion that we do that.
All right. I'm good with that.
We get a rate reduction too?
Yeah. Do you want to take the lead on that, Trustee Nell?
Sure, I'd be glad to bring some forward.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Trustee Malak.
So this is the case of there's liability, there's risk, and some of the risk that we have in our homes or our cars or our lives, we buy insurance to transfer the risk off to somebody else. We have more FDIC insurance in case our bank fails. We do various plans to make sure that there's other kinds of liability. But finally, the consequences come to us, and they don't. And there's some kinds of insurance. Life insurance doesn't keep you from dying. It just covers the financial consequence of dying. It doesn't do the rest of the problem, which is raising grandkids and other things. So I think we need to think about this like we lived out in the country and we're more on the prairie, self-sufficient. Maybe we're on septic tanks instead of a municipal sewer. There's all kinds of things, or wells. You still need electricity to pump water out of the well. I think we need to be thinking about some self-sufficiency things that we need to do. And some of those we can do pretty affordably if we spend the budget we have carefully. And there's some things that come to mind that we could do. We can trim trees back on our campuses. We can do a much stronger arbor program. We would be expected as a school district to house the people who are all displaced out of their houses when their lights go out and their air conditioning fails. They're going to come to our disaster center, and that would be Novato High's gym and San Marin's gym and maybe some others. I assume, Chris, we have a collaborative plan with the police department in the city that identifies the actual sites. I know as a matter of law, the schools are all required to be able to serve in that capacity, but I assume we have a plan.
Yeah, I mean, the assumption in the case of a power shutoff, the assumption is that people will be continuing to sleep in their homes. Their homes are still safe. They just don't have power. They have talked with us about using this district office, since we have a generator.
Yep.
As a charging station, an opportunity for people to come in and charge their devices. Outside of that, they're not planning on opening up shelters for people to sleep in.
Okay.
Just a few charging stations around town.
Okay, so that's a pretty modest response. I'm not sure that I think that's adequate, but the question is, what does it cost to put a generator set at San Marin and Novato High? If that's, $200,000 a piece, that's pretty cheap. We probably, if there's a power outage, all of our phones in this entire district, almost all of our phones in this district are voice over IP. They use the internet circuitry to carry the voice signal. And the minute the power goes off on the campuses, they all go dead unless they have a battery backup. And I know we have some closets with battery backup and some not. So that means the teacher's going to have to pick up their cell phone if the tower's up and operational. So now we should understand what the plan is. I know the College of Marin, I just heard Sunday the College of Marin is putting cell phone access points on the Indian Valley campus because they have terrible coverage. As part of their construction program, they're improving their cell phone coverage. I don't know if for this reason or not, but stuff's happening. So I think we need to do an inventory of where we see risks and where we could mitigate them and what the cost is, and then prioritize that list and say, okay, we're going to spend $1 million or $500,000 to mitigate the risk, and have a plan that identifies how we would do that, and then decide to do that, and in a systematic way. And just having the study may turn out to be, so we invest in the stuff that's high value and low cost, right, to first. So I would be interested in that kind of approach, not tomorrow morning, but maybe over the next year or so, put a study in place to figure out how we're going to respond to not only maybe the power's going out disaster, but other things that may allow us to reflect on that kind of, us as a public agency be ready for what's coming. Things are getting hotter, we know that. The chance for a fire is getting higher. If you have a fire, the chance for the power getting cut off is now clearly identified. So I just think it's prudent on us to put a plan. So I guess it's a question of do we collectively want to have the superintendent or staff take some time and invest in that kind of thinking.
Trustee Cooper?
Yeah.
Just quick couple comments. I'm really, it should be noted, and I know everyone has, that we're not operating on an island as an organization. We've done a great job. All of these organizations mentioned in your report, the fire department, police department, they're all doing a great job and kind of working together as a team and pulling this all together. So I think we're very well represented in the recommendations here. And I'm also interested, we haven't really talked, maybe you're going to talk about it, but missed school days. I'm interested that the state is even talking about, you know, we have to look at this now because we're going to miss 2 weeks of school, and what are we going to do? So that's the next discussion, I'm sure, how we're going to make those, they call them emergency makeup days or whatever.
So historically, for days where we really didn't have control over whether or not we could operate schools, we were able to apply for a waiver. That still exists. I mean, nobody has attempted to try to apply for a waiver based on a PG&E public safety power shutoff. My assumption is that it would be treated similarly to the others, you know. But the bottom line is we have to be able to operate our schools safely, right? And as Ross points out, we are very dependent upon electricity. Not just for the obvious ways, but for all the communication ways in particular. You know, driving around town is going to be challenging. Those red lights out there, the green lights, yellow lights, those don't have extensive battery backup. So they'll last an hour and a half after the system goes down. So I think the key is that we're going to have to live through one or two of these and do our best to adjust and and potentially overreact to the first couple. You know, as we think we know how our systems are going to be impacted, but we don't know with certainty how our systems are going to react, and how we don't know how PG&E's grid is going to respond. You know, PG&E didn't build a grid so that they could shut it down, right? They built a grid that was always on. And so, you know, I don't think they particularly know what's going to happen when they start shutting off their grid. We're going to have to work our way through this. We're going to have to use common sense. We're going to learn from it. We're going to learn, you know, should we have battery backups on our solar? Should we have generators? Are we good the way we are? Would those just, you know, give us more devices to maintain that don't really provide a need? So we've got to navigate all that. We will. The point of bringing this forward now is to say this is the best plan we can have with the information that we have available to us. And we'll continue to refine it as we learn more. And we're working with the right partners.
Yeah, right. Thank you for that. Trustee Gala.
Thank you very much. And I just wanted to know what these guidelines that were brought forward today, like what would they look like literally? I know that, so we know they're here and we know we're going to refine them. But will they be in the student parent manual? Will they be on our website? Will they be divided into like what is the teacher going to do during the classroom if this happens? What is the parent should do if it happens during or after school hours? What will the students do? So I don't know. Would it be that? And you don't have to answer that tonight. But I'm just curious about, you know, I think it's important that we be really specific, and because we want to be prepared so that in time of the crisis, everything will be as crystal clear, and also with all this new information, would it be in Spanish and accessible to all?
Yes, I just heard today that MCOE is translating these documents into Spanish, and so the first next step is to put a lot of this on the website, and also to bring this into our emergency preparedness and district safety plan. I think you bring up some really great points about being more specific about, you know, what do teachers do, what do parents do, what do students do, and I think we can certainly expand upon that so that we have that. So I thank you for that.
Yes. Thank you for your hard work.
Mm-hmm. All right, I have a public comment, so we'll turn to that and then we'll wrap it up. Alan Harris.
didn't intend to speak, but this discussion went pretty far beyond what I thought the topic was going to be. Last meeting, we heard a great report on the electric purchase agreement and all of the kilowatt hours that it was able to generate. I would hope that any plan that you put together for preparing for public power shutoff would include battery systems for some of the kilowatt hours that your generators are already developing in the various parking lots, particularly at the sites that the public may need for. And don't just think about fires. Route 37 is flooding on a regular basis. I can remember not too many years ago when the PG&E substation down there was being sandbagged to avoid a complete shutdown from flooding. Thank you.
Thank you. And earthquakes too.
All right, this was a great conversation. Thank you, Leslie, very much. I'll just add that I like before you make a decision to close schools, there's some bullet points here that we could need to consider, or, I thought that was very well written. Okay, so let's move on. This is a work in progress, definitely. There are heat plan, shut-off plan, air plan. Our last staff report is the state facilities bond program and eligibility.
You were going to present the PDD public safety power. It's kind of blended.
Yes. Thank you, Tom.
All right, thank you. Tonight I'm going to go over the State of California School Facilities Program and the impact to NUSD historically and as part of the Measure G process moving forward. So the state facility program, as we know it, started in 1998 with Proposition 1A. There have been, that was a bond, which included an update in really what we know now as the state facility program. There have been 4 subsequent bonds, the last of which was in November of 2016, on the same day as our Measure G passed. That was Proposition 51. One thing I would like to say is that my predecessors have done a wonderful job of exhausting most of our state eligibility, which obviously was a wonderful thing for our district, but that does mean that there's not as much left for when I came. But you know what? I'm glad that they did that. There's 2 main programs within the current school facilities program at the state. That's new construction and modernization. New construction is a 50-50 split, whereas modernization is a 60-40 split between them. Proposition 51 also included 2 smaller programs, the charter school facility and the CTE, Career Technical Education Facility Program. The majority of the funds are in new construction and modernization, with smaller amounts in the other 2 programs. This is a breakdown of Proposition 51's dollars, the last bond, which was $6 billion split evenly between new construction and modernization, and $500 million each in CTE and charter school facility. Over the years, there's been a lot of kind of these smaller programs like CTE or charter schools. You might have heard about seismic upgrade program or critical overcrowding, or whatever kind of the flavor of the day was at the state level. But new construction and modernization have continued to be the largest projects, and then CTE and charter schools have kind of slotted themselves into kind of the secondary programs in the last couple of bonds. So eligibility for new construction usually is related to growth. So in communities with lots of construction, lots of development, you have a lot of new construction eligibility. In Marin County, there's not a lot of new construction eligibility because Marin County has been pretty much built out since the 70s. Modernization is the key one for NUSD to look at, but that's based on the age of facilities as well as the number of pupils at those facilities. The older the facilities are, the more eligibility potential of those facilities. Most of our projects that we're working on is in the modernization realm. One of the things that I do need to make clear is that all of the new construction and modernization dollars from Proposition 51 have already been accounted for. They, for the most part, were all projects that were completed prior to the bond passing in 2016. There had been a very long wait between the last facilities bond and the 2016 bond. And so the folks that were doing work over those period of time had their applications already in. So most of what we're going to be talking about is future state bonds, but I'll get into that in a minute. As we've been working on Measure G, we have put in modernization applications, and we've sent them in for several projects totaling $6 million. So what I'll tell you about that $6 million that we are under the current project eligible for a state match on. So, and when I say $6 million, this is roughly, double that, roughly $12 million in projects, of which the state will fund potentially $6 million, is there's a small chance that we don't see any of this money ever. There is a good chance that we get some or all of this funding in the next 3 to 7 years, depending on if they change the program or when the funds are available. And there's very little chance of us getting any money prior to 3 years on this $6 million. But like I said earlier, the projects that were funded by Proposition 51 were primarily done before that program was approved by the state. So we put in our applications, we're in line. And so as long as there are not major changes to the state program, we will be in line for when that funding is available. Our current remaining eligibility is $3.6 million. And while that is a lot of money, not really for a district our size. So we will look when we're doing our, especially when we're doing our IT infrastructure projects, this is when we're going to look to exhaust the remaining $3.6 million of eligibility. So likely by summer of 20 and summer of 21, we will have had our applications in for the remaining $3.6 million. One very positive note is the state CTE facility program. The difference between this program and the new construction and modernization programs are this is a competitive grant program. So whereas you have eligibility for new construction or modernization based on the age of buildings or growth in your student population, this is purely a competitive grant. I'm very happy to announce that the biotech portion of the STEM building at San Marin qualified with a high enough score to receive funding, and we're getting an official apportionment on September 25th of 2019. Everything's been approved, $1.4 million. So we will be getting that. That is for a portion of the building costs. And very excitingly to the program, it is their full list of equipment needs for the biotech, which was not insubstantial. So that's just a wonderful thing for the program over there, and for and for the facilities program in Novato in general. So I'll just go back to that really quickly to kind of summarize. So we have about $6 million in completed applications that are into the state, so waiting on funding for those projects. We have $1.4 million that we will actually receive funding for hopefully in the next couple of months. And then we have $3.6 million of additional eligibility that we will try to use up in projects in the summer of 2020 and 2021. So that being said, where are we kind of going from here? Trustee Butler noted that one of the items on the governor's desk is AB 48, and that's a facilities bond measure. That would be on the March 2020 state election. And it's important to note on this that while the legislature and the governor can put that in and sign it, all that does is put it on the ballot and for the voters to look to approve. The total bond is $15 billion, with $9 billion focused on K-12 education. With this one, this is the first time that I've seen that there is really a difference between the new construction and modernization funding. This is a focus of modernization based on the applications that they've been receiving over the past 6 to 7 years. But it also includes $500 million again of CTE and charter school funding on top of that. So $8 billion in new construction and modernization, and then another $1 billion in CTE and charter schools. There are some updates to grant procedures that we're looking at that could potentially negatively impact our applications. We're still looking at the potential, but it gives an additional level of prioritization of application that's not just first come, first serve. Seismic upgrades get a bump up on the prioritization. School districts that are under facility hardship, meaning county offices of ed and districts who have gone out and tried to pass local bonds and not been successful, they get a prioritization. So not a huge change in the program, but it'll be interesting to see how that changes our priority. There's also some changes to developer fees, but that's pretty in the weeds, so I won't get into that. The one very large change that a lot of people may have missed is that it proposes increasing local LEA's bonding capacity from 2.5% to 4%. And so what that means is currently our bonding capacity as a district is 2.5% of our assessed value in the district, which is about $13.77 billion in Novato. A move to 4% of that would mean that our bonding capacity would be $550 million as of today. So whereas we were going to get relatively close to our bonding capacity with all of Measure A from 2003 and Measure G from 2016, the district would now have additional bonding capacity if AB 40, if the March state bond measure passes. So with that, happy to open up to any questions.
Trustee Gala?
Yes. On page 4, your first slide, you talk about the State of California School Facilities Program, and you mentioned that we may see the money, we may not see the money, and so this is page 4.
Yeah. So the new construction and modernization. Sorry.
Yes. So so that's not the slide.
No.
On your PowerPoint, page 4. On
Yeah.
Okay.
State of California. Nope. State of California School Facility Program. Current modernization applications on Beyond Bond Authority list. You number the page. It's page 4. Yeah. Okay. So there you go. Okay. So that's a lot of money to not know if we are going to receive it or not receive it, or maybe not. So so how and when will we know?
So the next, we'll know more information after the March election, which will see if there is additional $9 billion in the pipeline for K-12. Really, it's the $5.2 billion that we're focused on there for modernization applications. But to be clear, we are not budgeting to receive any of these funding in order to meet our construction cash flow for this, as this funding is subject to approval and likely 3 to 7 years away.
Yeah, we're being conservative.
Yep.
But, so thank you. So you're saying after the election?
We'll know some more information, yes.
Yep. Thank you. Look forward to that.
We're just getting in line for the money.
We're in line.
We're in line. Trustee Malak and Trustee Mack.
So this is interesting in that it really does put us in a position to think long-term. In the last bond measure, I think we raised 107 million, but because of eligibilities that came in later, I think another 30 million came in to this district, and that was money that was used. We did a lot of repair with 107 million, but there was still lots of, buildings are old and tired and falling apart, and things like all of a sudden you discover you need air conditioning because your circumstances changed, and we used it for those kinds of facilities. So I look at this 5.8 million in that same light. It's going to be, it'll come when it comes. It's going to be in the future sometime. It'll be a way of hedging against unforeseen expenses, because this is unforeseen income. Obviously, you don't have it in the current budget because you don't know when it's going to come, and you wouldn't even know what year to put it in. If you'd have to guess. So that's good. Thank you. I'm excited about the 1.4 million that may just drop in our lap here. That's how this stuff sort of happens. All of a sudden, you get a notice from the state, and your CFO comes to a board meeting and tells you got an extra $1 million. That's wonderful. In general, this Nevada Unified District is about a tenth of 1% of the district. We're 1 in 1,000 school districts. So when somebody says $9 billion at the state budget, in my mind, I think 9 million to Nevada. Now, by eligibility, we may get none of it, or we may get more than that. But just for a rule of thumb, if there's 9 billion coming and we have how much eligibility? 6
million.
6
plus
million.
The 3.6.
There's a reasonable chance that we're going to see some of that.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, there's a reasonable chance based on the way things have worked in the past. That one in that just moved the decimal 3 points rule has been a change billions to millions. So this is really exciting. The most important thing of this whole report to me is the last page, and it says that the bond, second to last page, questions doesn't count, that the bonding capacity of the district can go from 2.5 to 4%. Now, putting the homeowners and businesses in Novato in debt to support a fancy school district with fancy buildings is all a bad idea. But to have the resources to make sure the buildings aren't falling down and students have clean restrooms and safe buildings that are earthquake protected and is what we're supposed to be doing, and this opens the door so we can do our job. And because we're right up against these numbers already. So that to me, of everything that happened, is it allows us as a school district over time to protect the services we're supposed to be delivering. So if this gets on the ballot in March, I'll vote for it. I guess that's what I'm telling you. Thanks.
Trustee Mack and then Trustee Gala.
Of course I'll vote for it. Quick question, slide 7, the 6 million, no, 5.8, just want to make sure that's not impacted if AB 48 gets on the ballot and then subsequently passes.
So if AB 48 gets on the ballot and subsequently passes, our chances of getting that $5.8 million in the more of the 3-year range than the 7-year range is greatly improved.
Okay.
The $5.2 billion of modernization funding that would be approved would start paying off some of those folks who are in line, which includes us.
Got it.
And so as long as the changes in priority don't significantly negatively affect us, that is a very good sign.
But, okay, so what I heard you say, though, is effectively it improves the chances we get the 5.8 sooner, but effectively it's being taken from that 9 million. Is that what I'm hearing? Potentially? That gets
passed. So the 5.2 billion of the 9 billion is specifically focused to
Oh,
modernization.
I'm sorry, our 5.8.
Oh.
Our 5.8 would effectively come from that
Yes, exactly.
9? Okay, got
Exactly.
it. So it doesn't really matter to us, I mean, as long as we get it, but got it.
Exactly,
Okay. But the point being that it's not like we're going to be able to submit a whole bunch of other projects beyond that 5.8 to go against the 9 billion.
So we'll put in the summer of 20
Okay.
and the summer of 21 the additional.
Got it.
Most,
Thank
if not all, of the 3.6.
Okay.
You know, but there's like Trustee Millerick noted, there's 999 other school districts that want to get in line for this money as well. So.
The last question I got is, and this is just my opinion, so I'm just putting it out there. I would like for us to do whatever we can to make sure that 1.4 goes to San Marin as best we can.
That's one trustee.
That's one trustee. Yes, I know.
I know.
I'm making it real clear,
Yeah.
because I don't want to,
No, you're right.
bark too loud about it, but I think it's only right.
Trustee Gasson?
So I think I kind of have the same question, but before that, when you talked about your predecessors, it triggered something that I completely forgot to tell you. I was at a Master Gardener event this weekend, and Karen Mahoney, right?
Maloney.
Maloney.
Oh,
She's
is
now
she there?
Karen Smith.
Yeah, Karen Smith.
She was. This woman came up and she actually hugged me too, and I didn't know who she was. I just because it was out of context. But I have her card, and she says hello and wants to touch it. No, she's in part of a community garden, but she's actually doing something with education again. She's retired, but she looked great. She's doing really well. But anyway, it was a weird. I was in Sonoma County too, so it was kind of completely out of my. Yeah.
Yeah, she got her master's.
Oh, masters.
Yeah. So anyway, so going back, I think my question correlates to what you were saying, but in a different way. So I know that the bond money you had mentioned to me before when I was asking about funds, you had said that the money wasn't coming out for the things that we had applied for, like that it was sitting there. So I assume that what is that amount? The 3.8 that we've been talking about is the amount, or 5.8. I wish it was 3.8. The 5.8 has been sitting there, but what you're basically, I presume that there was still money and they were just not releasing it fast enough, but there's just no more money out of that bucket. And that the 9 million, because I was thinking it was 2, the 9 million was, Chris, I see you, was something new. So everybody is in line as they are in line, with the exception of the 3 million that you identified as separate. So we're all on the same line. There's nothing we can do to change it. It's just, if the money gets released, then we get.
Yep, so we were able to get in line the moment we got DSA approval on the projects. So after we got DSA approval, the next day, they sent in those funds, those applications into the state, and we got in line. But we were in line, what's called past the authorization point. So we're in line past what the Proposition 51 and the 4 the preceding bonds at the state level. So they were technically out of money, but we're in line for when there is money. And the next potential time for that is if the AB 48, which will be on the March election, passes.
So it's like just like a continuation of this thing that just keeps going. So, okay.
Decade
Well,
over decade.
that just is really awful. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that clarification.
All right, I want to.
When we went back and picked up the 30 million, I think we went back 20 years. We went
I
back
don't
a
remember
long
that.
time because
Back a long time.
the district hadn't applied for them.
Oh.
We
got our act together then.
No, exactly. We had a CFO that
Yeah, free money.
just like the current CFO, I might add, is really on top of the game.
Okay, I have a public comment. Mariah Fisher.
Ooh, I get to hold your binder. No, okay. I just have a question. I don't know. I don't know that you can answer it, but more of a concern based on what Trustee Mack just said about that extra 1.4 million that may be there in revenue for these kinds of projects. And as we're sitting here with with school sites asking for AC, and we're sitting with some, elementary parents who are really feeling like a huge portion of this bond has gone towards the high schools. I would hope that 1.4 could be looked at in more creative ways than continuing to fund the high school programs. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yancey, I believe that was a grant that was specifically for the building at San Marin, the biotech building?
It is a grant specifically for that project.
The language, it has to stay that way.
It's
So
very
the
specific.
string-
It's
yeah,
very
this-
specific.
yeah.
We need to, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we'll wrap. Oh,
Just
yes, Trustee
point
Mel.
point of order on the question on agendized items. When there's public comment that is brought up and it's an agendized item, we can discuss it.
We can discuss it.
We can
Yeah.
ask it and get to.
That's why Yancey was
bottom
able
of
to
it.
respond, or
Yeah.
Chris was able to respond. So, sure. Come on.
So if this extra money is specially designated,
Designated, right.
but it's opening up bond money. Is that-
No.
No.
I don't believe so, because it's going to go
That's for
to.
the second round.
Yeah.
There we go. That's what I needed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if it was sitting there ready. It could, though. It could.
That it opens up.
Big picture, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
How much flexibility does it give us? Do we have to have, we've already built the building, right?
So the biggest change is the equipment that will be able to be, so that will be an alteration to the budget of the project because the equipment has been funded now.
Okay, this was really good. Thank you for bringing this forward.
Absolutely.
This is very helpful, and I think it's, yeah. Okay, we'll move on to the Yancey show continues. Do you want to do the unaudited first? Do you
It's
wanna
up to you.
do-
It's up to-
Everybody getting a little tired that maybe that we move that one up a little bit? Does it matter?
It doesn't matter to me. Whatever.
Then we'll just stick with what we have.
Serve at the
We'll go
pleasure
with-
of the Board of Trustees.
Yeah, we'll just stick with our normal process then. Okay, the board policy. We're going to move into our discussion action items.
Thank you, Trustee Butler. This item is an update to the board policy related to naming of a facility. It's a discussion action item only really because we do have some new construction going on, as we noted in the last item, and we're going to have several new buildings, the performing arts centers, the science buildings, and there has been some discussion on naming of those facilities. So I thought it was important to pull this off consent and at least have this have the light of day on. It's also an optional BP. So I think that sometimes that we like to look at those a little bit more carefully. There's not a lot of changes to this, with the exception of adding some clarity around a few things. I think it adds some important pieces of clarity. And with that, I'm happy to open it up to questions.
Okay, Trustee Gala and
Yeah.
Trustee Cooper.
I was wondering about on the note at the very beginning, which is in red, that won't be on the resolution as a final resolution, correct?
That will come out, yes.
Correct, okay. So the first sentence, and I don't, could we add facilities, new and existing, or existing and new, just like what the note said? What line are you on? First line. Correct. So just clarify literally what the note says on the very last sentence of the note. Just add it to the first sentence.
So I believe your recommendation is to say the governing board shall name new and existing district schools and other district owned.
Just for clarity. Yep. Thank you.
It seems like extra words to me. I don't see what it adds.
You're breaking it up between, you're identifying it as a new.
Well, it's not in any. It's not in the It's not at the, we need, whoever reads it needs to see what we're talking about.
Why would you separate new and existing?
Because we're, it's including new and existing.
But doesn't it include new and existing with no words added? It includes all. If you don't qualify it with words, it just seems like.
I'm comfortable with
Yeah,
either, so
Either
whatever
way's
the
fine,
board,
it just
whatever
seems
the
like
board wants.
making up words to.
I could go either way.
Yeah, fine.
So.
It's not worth the discussion.
So we'll go ahead and just,
You want to say?
Trustee Cooper, you were next? We'll just go down the line.
Yep, cool.
I have a question on page 2, the naming rights. Can you kind of go through this? This is really unclear to me. It says, "The board may grant to any person or entity the right to name any district building or facility." What is that? Can you explain that?
So we can work with a commercial entity to name, the AT&T Stadium or the Viacom Performing Arts Center or the BioMarin STEM Center.
Yeah.
So this is why
make sense?
it needs to say in the beginning.
No, he's,
Well, that's fine.
There's specifics on what we can't name them for, so it can't be named after a tobacco
think
product
we're-
or.
Right.
I'm just afraid we're opening up, crack in the door.
Well, yeah, I have some comments about this.
So let's talk about
Yeah,
it then.
yeah, let's talk about it.
okay, so can we,
We can move on.
yeah,
Maybe
well,
talk
I think
later.
it's a full conversation here. So Trustee Mack, and then we'll,
Yeah, and we'll talk about, this commercial thing, interesting from a money perspective, but it is a crack in the door, so let's talk about it. But my question actually, current state, so, as an example, at Samarin High School, the gym's named after Mr. Morosky. The court's named after Paul Faribault. Now they want to also get Craig Pitty's name in there somewhere. Totally understandable. How does this all fit with that? I mean, because they're existing, right? So did any of those names go through this process? Probably not.
I
More of
don't
a
know what
site
the policy
decision?
was at the time.
Probably a site
I know
decision?
that this policy has been in
I think
place
Faribault's court went through the
since
process.
2008.
Okay.
One thing that I do note is in here is when naming or renaming a district school, building, or facility, the board shall specify the duration
Yes.
for which the name shall be in effect, because our schools have been open a long time, and
Well, I guess my question then would evolve to this. Do we have an inventory, if you will, of all the named facilities and what the duration should be and that kind of stuff? Just so we know where we're at. Because I think on that campus, there's quite a few names floating around. And we probably need to formalize them all.
we
would
do not
recommend.
have a nice formalized list of.
Yeah.
No, I can bring that.
Then,
Linwood has a multi-purpose room named after the principal.
and then the Performing Arts Center, you can be sure that's going to get named. Same with the one at Samarin, Novato.
well, that's why it was important to bring this to
Yeah,
discussion
yeah.
action item.
So I guess current state, if we could just kind of do an inventory of where we're at and just kind of formalize all those so that we don't continue layering names on top of names.
Yep.
Yeah, and my guess is that nowhere has duration been discussed.
Right.
That would be
I
my
think
guess.
think so.
as of right now, people's assumptions are that things are in perpetuity.
I don't think anybody knows who Mr. Mead is.
Until we change it.
Mead Field for the ballpark.
For Sam.
well,
Yep.
Trustee Gasson, did you have any? Okay, Trustee Nell, did you have anything? Trustee Miller, what do you do?
I think it's good to have a policy.
Yeah. Trustee
Well,
Miller?
we've had a policy for naming, and I
We've
think
had it.
Faribault's court went through the policy. Morosky's court, I don't remember because I wasn't here when that happened. Emily Gates did not go through the policy. They just put the
did.
name on. Did it?
We
Oh,
have,
we have before.
I got the board report right here.
Okay. Well, yeah.
2007.
That's about right. Okay. So I take that back. It did. Okay. The issue of duration to me is critical. My wife worked at a private school, and it's a significant source of revenue to name stuff. And maybe it's 20 years, but if we don't, I think we're fiscally irresponsible if we don't reflect on how we're going to do this and make it vote at this table one way or another, we're going to do it or not. And I think starting with a list of what we got already is good. I think maybe changing Lou Sutton School now is a little late in the game. I mean, we could, maybe Novato High School, you'd want to call it, well, a Dixie School or something.
Oh, gosh.
Just to liven things, but I think we need to think about it and have an assessment of what it's worth. I think we need to find some other examples in the county where people have used naming rights and find out what the financial impact is. Because if we're going to sit here with our teachers in front of us and say, oh, there was an opportunity to generate revenue when we didn't even talk about it, I think we can't stand on that ground. I think we have to have the conversation. We might choose not to do it after public input, but I think we have to have the conversation because it could be $500,000 a year across the whole district. I mean, I don't know we're going to find out the number, but I think we're obligated because of its financial impact to have the conversation.
All right.
You don't like Dixie School?
We're getting a little tired, so let's keep moving. On the first page, under just below number 3, 1, 2, 3, and it says the board encouraged community participation in the process of selecting names. I'm going to suggest that we change that. A citizen advisory committee may be appointed. I would change it to a shall.
Mm-hmm.
The superintendent shall appoint an advisory committee to review name suggestions and submit recommendations for the board's consideration. And maybe just cross out citizen and just put an advisory committee shall be appointed to review, or the superintendent shall appoint an advisory committee.
Now I
Yes,
do.
yeah.
Well, so my first thought on that though is what if it's not, if I read I could see where like a building, it's a big deal, or like but this even includes grounds. So if it's like a little open thing, you want to have a committee to do that?
I think you should.
Like if it's a
You need to
foyer?
make sure that you're not missing somebody. You're not missing some reason not to do this name, or maybe there's another.
Well, that's why
name
I'm just saying, I can see where, if we would want to, I don't know, I like the open-endedness of may rather than shall, because if there's something small, and I think, isn't there something like even benches in here, or where is that later?
That was the reasoning that we had gone with may, was if it was a tree or a bench or.
The bench right outside
All
the
right,
door
I
here.
agree. I hear you. I see what you mean. Okay. So we can leave it as may. Highly recommend. No. Okay. I'm good with may, and I agree to keep things opened a little bit.
It seems weird to me, but I think times have changed. I think 50 years ago, we'd go, are you kidding me? You're gonna, this should be in memory of leaders of the community, but the world's changed.
Yeah, right.
AT&T Stadium wasn't always AT&T Stadium.
Okay, would you like this to come back for just one more review? Yeah.
I have a.
Just bring it
Well,
back
I want-
for us
I
to
want
sit
that.
on it again and.
Absolutely.
I'm interested in the numbers, a list of, as best
Okay.
as we can come up with, what do we currently have now? And you can just send out an email to the principals and say, walk around, if you find somebody's name on a wall, write it down.
And also what other agencies.
And what's the probable cost, some estimates of what this would produce as revenue.
Could I,
Yeah, there may not be, but I'll look to find if there's any.
President?
Yeah.
So
Trustee Nell.
one of the things I don't see is some sort of vetting process. Maybe the advisory committee, the sentence could be amended to say we may appoint a committee to vet, but I think history shows that sometimes people have risen to high levels of recognition only to be found out later that they were not worthy. So I think it would be important that we had some kind of a
Have a right to reverse it.
You do at the end here.
vetting process.
Reserve the authority to terminate the naming right if the determined.
something like that
the
exist already?
grantees receiving the naming right has engaged in any of the prohibited acts. Yeah. So if they've done something illegal, they're out of there. Yes, right.
Well, legal may not be the standard.
Yeah. All right, so let's have him, Yancey will bring this back. Make sure you look at it again when it comes over on discussion action, and we'll have another review of it.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I'm glad I brought it on discussion
Yes,
action.
Yes. Maybe the next meeting, maybe after that, depends on when you can accumulate the information. All right, moving on. So there's no vote on that because we'll just bring it back.
By the way, there's other organizations that have decided to put names on our fields, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Babe Ruth.
We should tear them down.
No, I'm just letting you know. It's out there. The 2 middle school baseball fields have names on them.
That's true, they do. You're right. Hmm. Yeah. No, they've actually named the field.
Dave Hernandez Field at San Marin and Mike Testa Field at Sinaloa.
Yeah.
Both very, very strong volunteers.
So they can write a check.
Okay, we're gonna move on. This is item 14B. This is the resolution for issuing our next bond funds.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, in November of 2016, the voters generously passed Measure G, the $222 million GO bond. In March of 2017, the district issued the first $51 million of that. $4 million of that was included as technology bonds, so that covers the first, a little over the first half of the bond program in terms of technology. So that was Series A. We're here to approve Series B tonight. That is $55 million in scheduled. So it's a tiny bit more than the earlier projection of just about $54 million. Just to be very clear, the district already has construction commitments and is under contract for these fundings. So these funds that are coming in are paying the bills that we have already entered into contracts for. We're asking the board, by approving this resolution, the board is approving the issuance of this $55 million in Series B bonds. On a very positive note, if you've seen the municipal bond market right now, it's about as good of an environment as we've had. And so that helps us to hopefully, and I'll note, our next issuance in 2021 or 2022. The lower our interest costs are, the more room there is under what I call the Tetris game, that is the $60 per 100,000 of assessed value that we have to stay under for repayment of the Measure G bonds. So being in a lower interest rate environment will likely be 50 basis points ahead of our earlier projections as we move forward. So with that, I open it up to any questions and ask the board to approve the issuance of the bond. Oh, sorry, this would be finalized. It'll go out to sale on a competitive basis. So lowest total interest cost would win, and the issuance is scheduled to be finalized on October 16th.
I move we approve resolution number 11, authorizing the issuance of these Series B bonds.
All right, do you have a second? By Trustee Malak.
Thank you for reflecting on Trustee Shelley's work in terms of working with the county and keeping that model that we've adopted.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
One additional, this is all current interest bonds. No capital appreciation bonds are part of this. Capital appreciation bonds are the ones that we pay no interest or principal on, and that it accrues, years and years in advance. So these are plain vanilla.
Is there a tech component? So there's some early maturing Or was that all that done in the measure?
There are early
releasing?
maturing, but there is no specific tech as we've already issued the $4 million in the first issuance.
Okay.
So we've covered over the first 5 years of Chromebook issuances.
Right, so just to remind the board, we had some bond measures that matured very quickly because the life of to buy Chromebooks, because the life of a Chromebook was short. Having a 25-year maturity bond to pay for something that'll wear out in 4 years is a bad idea. So the board chose to have some of that early bond
Right.
go fast.
Okay, so we have a comment card. Zach, come on up.
Hey, Zach.
I'm back.
It's good.
Yeah, we're happy to have you.
So just as a brief thing, I have a lot to get through, so I might go over the 3 minutes, but I'm not here to lecture you on maps today. I'm here to talk about unfinished business related to Measure G. And this isn't actually the first time I've spoken to you about this. I spoke to you in May about the board's decision in October to delay over around $10 million in upgrades to IT and classrooms. And that same night, the district's own IT director turned around and asked you to delay the upgrades slated for the remaining amount of money because there simply wasn't enough. So I'm here to ask you again tonight to prioritize these projects as you contemplate the next issuance of these bond funds. And so I spoke to you about the ramifications of the board's decision in October and May. I'm sorry that I'm stuttering like mad. And just 2 weeks ago, you heard from students about how another lack of funding, in this case for AC, is causing problems, and how it presents a barrier to students' academic success. So today I ask you to, as you contemplate issuing this fund, in a very incoherent manner, I'm asking you today to fund those IT projects, fund the classroom upgrades, and fund the AC for those 4 schools. And so I told you in May that I worry about what this board's actions, I worry about the board's actions for 2 reasons. One, I worry that sticking with the status quo with no additional funds to these projects will pose a threat to this district's values and priorities. First of all, an inadequate network will jeopardize the One to World initiative. Now, I wrote a story about this for the Pony Express. You may have seen that it got a fancy award in the district's press releases. And I got I got a tour of sorts of some of the problems that this district faced in terms of its network problems. And a quote that I remember very vividly is, "You need a robust wired network to support these kinds of initiatives. You cannot pull adequate data over a wireless network." And it really speaks volumes that if we don't invest in this these IT upgrades, we will face these problems as we throw these additional thousands of devices that we did just this year. And now I'm no longer a student at San Marin, but even then, when I was there, before we threw these additional 1,000 devices on, during standardized testing, the wireless network was known to be spotty or frankly not work. Now, you also heard last week that inadequate air conditioning and access to it jeopardizes students' health and their ability to concentrate, which in turn jeopardizes their access to academic success and an equitable education. Now, I worry for a second reason about the board's actions in October and not following up on them. Specifically, that it could jeopardize the credibility of Measure G and the credibility of this board when it asks voters again in the future for additional funds. Let's all remember when this bond was being considered in the first place, what the opponents of Measure G said. They said that the funds could be allocated from essential projects to projects that weren't as high a priority. And this board, just 2 years later, voted to do just that by delaying these IT upgrades and these classroom upgrades in favor of fields at Novato High. I worry that if we do not rectify this, we will be sending a message that this board is endorsing the exact argument that they made against Measure G in the future. Now, I'd like to close with a quote, now that I'm way over time, from my article. Our rooms need upgrading, as simple as new paint. Our desks are old and not part of current practice in classrooms. Technology is poor and not up to what teachers and students deserve. We have 7 projectors out of service, and it will be very hard for us to move forward without having the support needed to do so. That was from the principal of San Marin, Mark Sims. Now, I ask you tonight, in my final speech before you, yes, congratulations, you've made it to the end, to give our students and our schools that support that they need to move forward. Please ensure that these projects, the IT upgrades, the air conditioning, and the classroom upgrades, the classroom toolkits, and the flexible furniture get done this time around. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Good luck with school. I know that's where you're headed, off to college. So we wish you well. He's going to Irvine. Yeah. Okay. So we have a first by Trustee Nell, a second by Trustee Malak. Discussion? Yes.
Thank you very much for coming in this evening and reminding us that we had a process for allocating the funds that we then at this board overrode for air conditioning and for fields, and reflected on exactly the concerns that the community had. The situation we're in now, I believe, is we have committed to those, this board, by majority, has committed the funds that we have, including the funds we're about to develop, to projects including the fields. Those contracts have been let. There's no way to back out of that without great cost, which I wouldn't support. We made those decisions. They were political, and I believe at this point we are committed to proceed on that basis. I believe this board also said as soon as the next round of funding becomes available that we will, as a priority, deal with the IT infrastructure. And the air conditioning is a conversation amongst us here in public that's been had, and we didn't make that commitment before. We're all 7 of us aware of that issue and how we will deal with it. But at this point, I think we are committed to going forward with this funding and fund the projects that we have already signed up for and by majority, and I will support issuing these bonds to fulfill the promises we've made to our contractors. And I appreciate all your points. Thank you very much. I just think we're past the point where we can change courses on these issues.
All right, so we'll wrap this one up. I have a first by Trustee Nell and a second by Trustee Malak. This is approved resolution number 11, 2019-20, authorizing the issuance and sale of Series B and approving forms of documents and actions of officers related to the transaction. All those in favor? 7-0. All right. Our last item is our unaudited actuals for last year, 18-19.
All right, thank you. We saved the best for last. It's September. We did. September 15th of each year, the district must close its books and have them approved by the Board of Trustees. This year, obviously, 2018-19 closed on June 30th, 2019, and we're here today to approve the unaudited actuals. I'm obviously going to be remiss every time if I don't thank Nancy Walker. If you think it's late now, you should see when she's usually here working on the unaudited actuals. So I just wanted to say thank you for your dedication and everything that you do for the students of this district, Nancy. And really more for me. When we look at... No. They definitely didn't see me later than her. So just to go down a few things on a couple different forms of the SACs. I don't love SACs forms, but there are a couple things that I do like to focus on. We have a percent of current cost in education expended for classroom compensation. And so for unified districts, we need to spend at least 55% of the funds in classrooms. And that's become more and more frequent that districts are not meeting these requirements. We meet it at over 60%, so significantly over that. Our Every Student Succeeds Act, maintenance of effort, we made that. That's obviously just an important logistical. No change to the GAN limit. That was already approved on consent. And the indirect cost rate is 5.24%, and that's gone down the last couple of years as we've continued to make cuts to the district office and to administrators. That indirect cost rate that we can charge restricted programs continues to decline. Overall, as you know, I focus on the unrestricted general fund. We had a reduction in the unrestricted general fund of $910,000 for the year ended, which is not obviously what we want to hear, but is better than the projections. And I'll get into a couple of the items that led to that. In terms of revenue, we had LCFF revenues of a little under $200,000 above projection. Most of those are related to two different items. One is children placed in MCOE programs. We don't get the information from MCOE until very late, but there's no net impact to the programs because any additional ADA revenue is sent over in a transfer. We have to transfer those revenues over to the organization that is providing those services. The other is Saturday school revenue. So we run Saturday schools. The board approved it a few years ago as a way to increase student opportunity as well as potentially to increase funding. So we budget that when it is when those ADA have been recovered. Half of that money goes back to the site, so it's not a pure revenue source for us, but our sites do get half of the benefit from that. We received $243,000 in what's called federal MAW reimbursement. It's around Medicare reimbursements for services provided to our students. These revenues that we got in are from as far back as 2014, 15. If you look back, these are the only unrestricted federal funds that we receive. So for the last 2 or 3 years, we haven't seen $1 of MAW funding as they've done a bunch of audits at the state. So we're hoping that this is a sign that those funds are going to start flowing again, as they weren't flowing in the last couple of years. One thing that the state changed is a requirement around STRS and PERS on behalf payments. So there was one big change from the estimated actuals to the unaudited actuals, and that was an increase of $3.5 million to revenue and expenses. This is simply an accounting entry that's required by the state to reflect payments that haven't even gone through the district. They were made directly to the STRS and PERS fund at the state level, and they send us an entry. But those some of those requirements were not in place in prior years. So this is a difference from prior years. We also had some unrestricted local revenues, interest earnings, as our interest rate has slowly increased. One positive thing about interest rates increasing is that our interest revenue will creep up. So we're looking at that, as well as facility use fees. As the board knows, we approved the Facilitron system as a way to potentially increase facility funding, and we're starting to see results from that. In terms of expenditures, we saw some departmental budgets coming in under budget. One thing I do want to focus on is and thank is our departments here. We went into budget cut mode mid-year here. And although the board did not make a decision to cut mid-year, because that can be very hurtful to programs sometimes, our department managers really stepped back and held back and really kind of took those cuts a year in advance of that. So I want to say thanks to those departments. One item that is reflected here is unrestricted school site carryover is $280,000. And so those are funds that weren't spent this year. They've carried over from years past. So $280,000 will carry over into their other budgets. Once I got here, we stopped the practice of departmental budgets carrying over. We only carry over site level budgets that are not used since I've been here. That one other thing, special education costs from the county of Marin. We noted the huge increase that we were seeing. One positive note to that was their projection their May projection was $220,000 higher than their ultimate end of June final number. So we're currently working with MCOE to see if they're updating their projection for next year or if that was a one-time in nature. Interfund transfers. I want to focus on one of these. So these are transfers to other funds. Food service, transfer of $327,000. The food service program last year ran a deficit of $400,000. So that's 4 additional teachers. We were able to use some funds in some grants and some other items to offset a little bit of that, but $320,000 was contributed from the general fund. Excited to say that we have a new food service director starting tomorrow, and one of his first charges will be to get in there and really increase participation in our program. Moving back, contributions to restricted programs. I'm only going to hit on 2 of these. We have a contribution last year of $9 million to our 3 various special education programs. The special education mental health that reverted to school districts after the repeal of AB 3634, and the excess cost to MCOE of $2.1 million. This represents over 60% of the cost. So what that really shows is not that our special ed costs are too high, but the funding by the federal government and the state government, which was supposed to fund these programs, has never come close to funding our programs of children with special needs. Overall, our fund balance is $12.2 million. Of that, 7.7 is unrestricted. I'll always focus on the unrestricted side of the budget because that's the only dollars that this board can use, for the things they need to do to run the school district. But 12.2 million is 12.7% of the general fund budget. That's down from about 22% as of about 10 years ago. Just a couple of things on the other funds to note. We have the food service. I noted the $400,000 deficit, which I think needs to be a focus that the board moves forward. Deferred maintenance, we contribute about $262,000 a year as part of our 3% required contribution to routine restricted maintenance. That's $1.9 million of funding that's available. While $1.8 million sounds like a lot, we spent $1.8 million on the San Ramon roof alone. So that is a focus. And then also the bond fund noted $33 million as of June 30th. We started about $75 million of construction in June. And so obviously we're starting to burn through funding as we build on those projects, which is a great thing. But that $33 million will be exhausted likely by about the end of by the end of the calendar year, and we'll need that $55 million that the board just approved. Next steps, key things. CalPAD will bring information as of the hopefully the October 15th or the first meeting in November, and those are our final numbers for the year. Those are the numbers that we really stick with to say, okay, these are our actual numbers. First interim is December 15th, and then we'll update the enrollment projections, and we'll be moving on towards 2020, 2021. So with that, I'm happy to open it up to questions.
Trustee Gasson?
So I think I misheard you possibly. When you said on the slide 9 for deferred maintenance, so you said required 3%. That's what we have to spend each year? Is that what you said?
On routine restricted maintenance, of which we choose to take a small amount of that $262,000 and transfer it to our deferred maintenance fund. So it is still restricted to maintenance.
Okay, but I guess my point is that there's something else that we have to, Like there's all these things that we have to divvy out to, so it makes the broader pool of money just be diminished.
Shrink, yeah.
So
we are required by the state, as a receipt of those 30 million plus that we've taken in state bond funding, to put aside 3% of our annual budget for routine restricted maintenance.
Okay, and then the piece I really, because I was processing that one, did you say the San Ramon roof was
$8 million.
$8 million? Okay, wow. And I had another question, but now I'm still stuck on that. So somebody else.
All right, I have a blue card, so Mariah, why don't you come up?
My question is regarding the $2 million and change reserved for declining enrollment. When we're up 145 students, last board meeting, we settled at probably up around 100 as like a safe number. So I'm wondering where that $2 million is going to go, and if it's going to go towards supporting additional students in our classrooms and on our caseloads.
If you could address that.
Yeah, absolutely. So our enrollment projections still project declining enrollment. The County of Marin has included updated projections of birth rate going forward, and they continue to actually be lower than that. We've had a 1 year bump, which is great, and I'm thrilled about it. We'll be updating our enrollment projections, but until then, my advice to the board will be that we have to look at the 1 year blip and look at the trends that we've seen. Now, if we get new information from our demographer that says that they don't project declining enrollment moving forward, then I'd be the first person to be happy and come up with that. But we currently still have more seniors than we do kindergartners in this district. And as long as we continue to do that, which is, and I'd have to go back and look, but which is still another 4 or 5 years, that's going to be a drag just on the natural to that. But I'd be the first person to be thrilled if the declining enrollment changes in the next couple of years.
Trustee Gala?
So just for clarity, the numbers went up for attendance, but we're still under enrollment.
So our
So
enrollment
we
is
decline. And can you remind me also the numbers that we mentioned in the last meeting?
yes. So we had projected to be down about 60 students. That was our enrollment projections for 2019-20. We ended up that will likely be at least 100 up in terms of enrollment over projection. And it could be over that, but like I said, the CBEDS number, which is the first Wednesday in October, that's the number that we've traditionally used as this is our enrollment number. So when I bring that back, I can let you know that. But our enrollment still will be significantly lower than it was in 2016-17.
Yeah.
We declined in enrollment by 170 students last year.
Thank you.
Other trustees? Trustee Gasson, keep going.
Sorry. So thank you. And I would agree. I would like to see a little bit more of a trend, like in an additional year before figuring that all those kids are going to still be here going forward. But I'm always conservative. So one of the things I noticed that we were, it's not significant, but brought to my attention a way for getting more revenue, or the increase for the recovered ADA from Saturday school. Do you know if all the schools are doing that?
I believe all the schools are doing that.
Right.
But my expert, yes?
All the schools are able to do that if they don't have enough students to make it financially feasible, and that school can go to another.
Oh, cool.
Oh,
Actually, I
okay.
didn't
I
know
didn't
about
know
that
that.
part. That would be cool. I know that we've done it at Pleasant Valley, but I know that actually she's not here. Jonna Martin does the one at Sinaloa, and it's San Jose, and I hadn't seen anything come up at Sinaloa, but I didn't know.
Usually they have to wait because they need to have, it has to be an absence prior to
Right, but I mean
I don't think you
last
can
year.
book absences in advance.
No, I
or
meant
later.
from no.
Yes, thank you, sorry.
I meant from last year. So anyway, that's a thing, definitely. I know that it requires certain staffing be present, so I know that's hard. And does anybody else have questions? I don't want to. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Now you raise your hand,
Is
everybody.
it about the 400,000? No. Okay. Well, that's just
going.
the 400,000 for the.
You gonna make a donation?
For the fans?
Yes.
Yeah.
So where is that coming from?
Well,
And
how did it get that? I mean,
So it's built up. It's been building up over the last couple of years. We've been spending down some fund
so
balance.
it's not just last year.
But it's a significant increase in last year. Our participation has continued to be stagnant or go down as a percentage. And this is just a little bit technical, but raises typically in schools are based on LCFF increases at the state level, and increases to revenue in the food service programs are related to increase in the free and reduced reimbursement rate. And so those things have not been matched up over the last few years. And so we've seen significant increases. Also, the PERS increase is hitting that especially hard, that program, as labor is a huge chunk of that cost. So the PERS increase over the last 6 or 7 years has increased another almost 7+% to the cost.
Then if it's, I know it's attached to the reduced and free lunch program, but do you think that people are just not understanding it, that they comply, or that they don't want to? I mean, I know that there was some information, like if you, go ahead.
I think the biggest problem in our food services program is that we can't give away free food. We can't get kids that qualify for free breakfast and lunch to eat our food on a regular basis. That's the biggest problem. We need to increase participation.
Why is that?
We need to change what we serve, I think.
I think that it's a number of things. I think it's complicated, and I think we've hired a new food services director who's run a program in the Black in his previous district and has some great ideas for how we can improve it moving forward. And I think my favorite statistic from him was that he increased participation in his district for 60 consecutive months. So 5 years in a row, or 6 years in a row, depending on how you count those months, participation went up. And we asked him how he did that. It wasn't marketing. He answered, I make good food that people want to eat. And it's healthy.
All right, Trustee Nell.
So I just want to bring attention to Reserve Fund 17 and our contribution to the pension liability. When do we start tapping that fund
So
for
I think
actual premium payments?
I think that question is going to surround this spring. We brought some proposals around reserve policies, and I think until the board decides on a reserve policy, I think it's important to link that in, because as the general fund reserve has declined, I think all reserves need to be looked at by this board in their policy of how it is to be used, or what level this board believes it needs to be kept.
So you're suggesting that we analyze that a little bit more thoroughly in the coming year, as to whether we're going to continue to put money into that reserve, or if we're going to start to take money out of that reserve.
I think we're going to be hard pressed to be putting any money into that reserve over the next couple of years. Save any significant one-time money that's provided by the state, but this governor has not shown a lot of proclivity for doing that, at least in his first budget. So without that, those one-time funds potentially available, I think it's going to be we're going to be hard pressed to be increasing. I think all of our energy needs to be looked into reducing our deficits that we're running in the different districts, so we stop spending down our current reserve.
So the opposite of that is to take it out and spend it then. If we're not going to be increasing the reserve, we're going to be...
Well, our projections show that in this year and the out years that we are projected, as we did last year and the year before, of deficit spend.
Okay. So that problem hasn't been resolved yet. Do you have any comments on this accounting pass-through? I mean, does that make sense to you? I know that at some point that according to PEPRA, which is the acronym for the Pension Reform Act, if our premiums reach a certain level and the employee premiums, there's a maximum amount that we have to pay according to PEPRA, and at that point the state has to assume the liability. And I understand the governor has been paying that down in advance with the recent budget, but I just wanted to make sure that pass-through, or what exactly is going on there.
The pass-through does relate to those items of the state making. So STRS in the past has approved, since almost the 2000, they've been paying a portion of our teachers and certificated staffs into the STRS pot at the state level. It relates to an increase in benefits that they gave in the late 90s or early 2000s. But now, as they've started doing additional things, as you've noted, of potentially paying down some of that liability at the state level, it's baby steps, but those numbers do get allocated onto our financial statements. Now, I think they have no business on the face of our financial statements because we use a modified cash basis of accounting, and those funds don't ever move through this district. This board has no authority or ability to change that, and so usually accounting comes with where the decision making has to do with, but that's what the state requires, and that's what our auditors look at. So we're gonna make those entries. But yeah, it does have to do with the adopted state budget that approved additional spend down. So that's why you'll hear PERS on behalf payments along with STRS on behalf payments that you've been hearing about the last couple of years. And it's why the $3.5 million was not projected, because it wasn't known until the final adopted budget that they were going to start doing that.
Right. So I'm not going to take any more time tonight, but on the face of it, it seems a bit like hanky-panky. There seems to be some moving numbers around there, and I think we should be generally concerned about the governor saying that he's going to pay down in advance the premiums to lower the percentage of the impact that's going to have on us, and then essentially then he puts it through our books, and it just. I guess I'm just try to find out a little bit more about it, but I was surprised to see how they handled that, and I just was wondering what your take on it was.
I think it makes a lot more sense as in the notes to your financial statements of payments that were been made on your behalf by the state. So it does a disclosure. Mm-hmm. They've got it the same as every dollar that we, pay a teacher or a principal or buying pencils. So I don't think it's equivalent.
So one last question. Where do you think we are on the pension liability situation? Do you think the state's got it under control, or do you think that, okay.
I don't think they're close.
So we should continue to be prepared for that type of shock.
I think they're moving in the right, fiscal direction by, significantly increasing the amount of money that they're putting into it. I question them putting it on school districts and basically on the backs of children to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Malak and then Trustee Cooper.
The comments you made earlier, we had reserves of 22% a decade ago, and we are currently sitting at 12% reserves. today, that's a 1% per year in the wrong direction. We are overspending our income, our expenses exceed our income by about 1% over a long period of time. And we've all been sitting here for a good part of that. 1% is, for this district, which is about a $100 million a year enterprise, is about $1 million a year. So while we've working on these issues, we have to find a way to do 1% better. And that means some of these grand schemes are good to talk about, but the details are going to matter a great deal. So the fans was $300,000.
$327,000 contribution
Yeah,
this year.
327. That's not $1 million, but it's a third of $1 million. So I'm glad to see the superintendent's taking action to address that issue. And if it gets to neutral, which is in my experience a good position to be, I've rarely seen it positive, but neutral would be better than $300,000 the wrong way. We have a parcel tax that we have to renew. We're talking about how we might do that, what would the rate be, what happens if it doesn't get approved. We have control of that. This board's got control of that. We have this naming rates conversation, and maybe that's $200,000 a year, but it's not $1 million, but it's part of $1 million. We've financed the Chromebooks through a part of the bond measure. Normally that would be an operating expense, so we've moved an operating expense for equipment over to a capital expense that's on the bond, so that's helped the district. We've used E-rate when we can. Tim's done a really good job of leveraging the circuits and the access points. We're doing little bits and pieces, but we're not doing enough. We, as a board, Chris is the superintendent, Nancy you get to play too, we have to find another percent. We've not found it for 10 years, and we are in significantly more jeopardy now than we have been for the last decade. We have to get serious about what we're doing. We are not serious enough yet. This has to, the conversations over Chris's first year in office is going to be very uncomfortable conversations. We have to find that 1%. So thank you for the report. That's what this report's supposed to tell us. It's supposed to tell us if we're on top of our game or if we're slipping. And if I was a basketball team, we got to change something. We have to change the players or change the coach or something, or change the strategy. We got to do better than we've been doing, because we're not going to win the championship with this kind of play. So thank you for the report. It's very informative.
I just have a quick
Trustee
question,
Cooper.
Nancy. Where do those monies reside for the reserve for declining enrollment? What fund is that in?
That's in Fund 01. That's our general fund.
Oh, just general fund.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Thanks.
All right, so this is an action item.
I will move adoption.
Okay, first by Trustee Malak, second by Trustee Nell. This is to approve our unaudited actuals for 2018-19. All those in favor? 7-0. All right, that concludes our meeting. Thank you, Yancey. And our next regular scheduled board meeting is October 1st. This meeting is adjourned.